Oh God. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that part's not going in, but that's all right.
That can't be the intro to the podcast.
Yeah. So yeah. Right. Um. Episode 2 of the football podcast, I guess you call it. Um.
Talk. Touch wood.
Touch wood.
I don't like
What?
either of those names, man. They're horrible.
Wood balls.
No, why does it have to be wood?
Jingle touch.
Why does it have to... I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna leave you to do your own fucking podcast by yourself.
Oh God. Yeah. There you go. New podcast name. Jingle touch.
This is the unconfirmed name to be confirmed
Oh.
podcast.
Yep. Football based with a high amount of Villa seasoning.
Feel a flavour.
Mm. Not artificial though. Authentic.
Nah, good stuff. Yeah,
uh,
yeah. So what are you saying for the game then? Predicting a
um,
win?
well, the thing is, this is going to get uploaded after the game happens. So, like, well, I suppose we could predict what's going to happen, but I think the main focus should be probably talk of what the league's going to look like next season, what we think is going to happen, regardless of um, transfers that could happen in the summer. So, like, just based on where the teams have got to and how they've progressed over the season, what we think the league
Okay.
might look like next year, and then we can take into account the relegated teams and the promoted teams in terms of where they're going to finish as well. I
Yeah.
think.
All right. Well, we know all the promoted teams now, don't we? So
Yeah, Luton. What they're
yeah,
going to have to
Luton.
spend most of the money on the stadium, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know. I think they might have been given like a pass on the regulation for 1 year, maybe.
Is that what you've heard?
Well, I saw an article saying that next year their capacity is going to be 10,500 or something, which is what it is now.
Oh, I've still got the slip sessions overlay on. Well, I suppose we could
Okay.
just use it for this as well, and we'll just have to
Yeah, doesn't matter.
change it. But anyway, yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, I read an article saying that their capacity is going to be 10,500 next year, which is what it is now, I think. So I think maybe there's a period of time that they've got to get it upgraded by, but it doesn't seem to apply to next year. But yeah, that's ridiculously small. Kind of exciting to have such a tiny little stadium.
Yeah, there's
Pretty
going to be
cool.
like Erling Haaland on the pitch, and then
Yeah,
just he's going to be hearing
really
everything they're
cool
saying to
stadium
him.
as well. It's really old. And it's one of those stadiums that's right in the middle of a little community. It's just like goes directly behind people's houses and stuff.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Then you have to walk through like a high street shop or
Yeah,
something
there's
to
some kind of cut through.
enter it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's cool. I kind of wanted Coventry to get promoted, to be fair, but
Yeah, it would have been interesting when they play Villa, to be fair.
yeah, I like the Midlands teams to do well, to be honest.
Mm.
And yeah, it would have been nice to have a because I reckon Coventry is probably more of a rivalry with Villa than like Wolves.
Yeah, probably.
Um,
Because
in
Wolves is
terms
always
of
just seen as a derby, not really as a rivalry.
yeah, Wolves is vaguely a derby, but nobody really cares because Wolves have got their derby is West Brom, Villa's is Birmingham, really.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I kind of would have liked Coventry to go up, but I'm happy that with Luton and Coventry, they're both teams that haven't been in the Premier League in ages.
Yep. So
So
nice
it's
little
nice to have a new team
stories.
either way. Yeah. But then in terms of next year, it's hard to see them staying up, unfortunately. But then you say that every year, don't you? People said that about Fulham this year, and well, they're finishing 10th.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the teams going up, you've got Burnley, and well, while Company is well seemingly a quality manager, who's got his own style that could be quite useful in the Premier League if you put the right players into it. I just don't know if they're going to have the right players because I think a few of their best players are on loan.
Yeah,
I think a good three, four at least.
yeah. And then with a style like that as well, you've always worried that they won't be solid enough at the back. You know.
Mm.
Um,
Although saying all this, financially it might not be so bad for them because they didn't spend a lot of money in the Prem, and
well, I
now
think it's well they've got new owners, haven't they? Didn't they get new owners the year they went down, or the year
possibly,
before?
but
They've got
they
relatively
yeah
new owners, and I think financially, I think of the three teams coming up, they'll definitely be in the best place um, to get some decent players in.
yeah it'll be
Uh,
so interesting to see them not as like that Sean Dyche ball
I know,
type
yeah, yeah,
team, like with an actual sort of attacking philosophy.
yeah, yeah. I think Burnley will be all right. Company seems to be a good manager, and I think financially, out of the three, they'll be able to compete financially with some of the um, some of the less well-off teams, and like with if you look at Bournemouth, Forest, maybe Palace, Fulham, Burnley will be able to match them financially in terms of transfers and stuff. So I don't think Burnley.
I think Palace would probably have more.
Yeah, probably just out of being in the Premier League for ages, but um,
Yeah,
yeah, no, maybe not Palace, but either way, there'll be a few teams in the Premier League that Burnley will be able to compete with financially, and they've got a good manager. I don't really know anything about Sheffield United, to be fair.
yeah. I know they've got. I'd say they've probably got a better overall squad that aren't. If you take, I think they've only got one or two loan players that start.
Mm.
Um, and then if you take into account how much of Burnley's team is on loan, and they're important players like what's it, Martin on left back. You've got Nathan Teller.
Hmm.
Um, they've got Harwood Bellis from City, and they're all like really important first team, first 11 players. So yeah, I think it disturbs their team more so going into
Yeah,
next season when they go back to those other teams uh, than um, sorry, I completely forgot the first team that I'm talking about.
Sheffield
Sheffield
United.
United. Yeah, they've got. I know they've got. I think they've got Doyle maybe and McAtee from City, one or two. But I think only McAtee is the. Actually, do you know what? I don't know. Doyle might not even be there. I might be talking about. Anyway, they've only got one or two loan players
Yeah,
that are consistently starting. I think so. I think their overall squad will be less changed. In terms of what they'll do to improve it
yeah,
in the Premier League next year. So I think it'll be a bit more of a settled squad.
yeah,
Um, with similar, if not better, overall quality by that time, unless Burnley go mad and spend loads of money trying to upgrade the team. So I back Sheffield United to be a better contender in the league
oh, really.
than Burnley to begin with. But then once Burnley, if they survive that first season, I think they have a much higher ceiling than Sheffield United.
Yeah, possibly with company, possibly because I'm thinking I didn't even know who Sheffield United's manager was, and it's Paul Heckingbottom. Who, to be fair, it's hard to judge him as a manager because he's not had a very long managerial career, and he's done well at Sheffield United. Um, he managed Barnsley, and he did well at Barnsley, and then he went to Leeds and didn't do that well.
Yeah,
Then he managed Hibs and did quite well in his first season, and then dropped off in his second season, and then he's done well at Sheffield United. So it's hard to judge him as a manager, really. But Company seems like a promising manager. So, like you say, if Burnley can get past that first season, then yeah, maybe they've got a bit more of a ceiling, higher ceiling.
I would think so. Yeah, just
Yeah,
because especially their more attacking philosophy, more exciting style of play. Like if that can be to any level similar to Brighton, and they can employ a similar transfer strategy, then there's no reason they couldn't be,
Yeah,
um, in that sort of position that Brighton are in 4 or 5 years time,
yeah,
um, maybe less than that. So yeah, I'd say they've probably got a better long term uh, future in the Premier League if they can stay in it in the first season. Because I think that'll be the hardest hit to take. Because don't forget, it was only towards I think the end of last season when Sean Dyche left, didn't he? Like he'd gone most of the
um,
season, and he was
yeah. They sacked
keeping
him
them out. I
before
think.
like the
Yeah,
last 5 games or something, or like
yeah.
10 games, and
So they've
then
only really had, and company only came in the summer. He didn't take over
yeah,
those last few games,
no,
so
no,
they've only had him for a year, 1 year in the championship. Now, yeah, it was a great year, but there's no longevity test to that, so we haven't seen him do it over a long period of time.
no.
There's also the fact that when attacking teams come up to the Premier League, they do struggle in that first year just because they don't have the quality to match up against other
Yeah,
opponents who are going
that's
to
the
do that
thing.
to
That's
you.
the thing that possibly would be a worry for them is that if they come into the Premier League expecting to play the same style of football and for it to succeed, then they're just going to get shocked, aren't they? Um,
I'm not saying I think they're stupid enough to come up and just think that they can just play the exact way they want and,
you know,
not have to worry about opponents or not have to worry about them in similar ways that they might not have in the championship. Obviously not. I'm just saying I think they could get a little excited by like Brentford and Brighton stories and things like that, and possibly try and emulate that, and perhaps without the whole infrastructure that those clubs have to produce the results that they do on the pitch, might be slightly less developed at Burnley, considering how long ago it was they were under Sean Dyche and didn't
yeah,
spend any
true.
money.
Yeah,
So maybe they don't have the ability to sustain that sort of
true.
progress at the moment. I don't know.
Brentford, Brentford did really well in their first season, didn't they? But Thomas Frank had been their manager for a long time in the Championship, and they've got that kind of money ball, similar approach to Brighton, where they buy players cheap that fit the system, fit the structure, and so they did have sort of 3 or 4 years of stability in the Championship before they went up. Um, so yeah, I agree. Burnley probably don't have the same kind of structural stability that a club like Brentford did have. Fulham did really well, to be fair.
Yeah, but I
Uh,
suppose Fulham are probably more so than Burnley, were a yo-yo club for a good few
yeah,
years before they have come into a season like now where they actually sort of have their shit together under Marco Silva and have pushed on past the relegation battle.
yeah, and Marco Silva had a decent bit of Premier League experience as well, which company doesn't have.
Mm. Well, he does in the form of playing staff under Pep Guardiola. So he's
Yeah,
obviously had, like we've seen Mikel Arteta jump straight into a senior role and
yeah,
perform. Obviously, company uh, was at Anderlecht, I think, previously.
yeah.
I don't think, did he win a league title with them? Or
No, he didn't. I read up about it briefly a while ago. On the face of it, it looks like he did kind of badly at Anderlecht, but then when you read about what fans thought of his time at Anderlecht, and apparently it seemed like he had a massive rebuild job, didn't really have a lot of support from the board and stuff, and so um, while sort of on the face of it, it didn't look that great. He actually did well with the resources he had, kind of thing.
how did the
Um,
team do?
so he joined in 2020. Um, they came fourth in the league and got qualified for the Conference League, and then 2021 they came third in the league. So
Mm.
I'm not sure what their expectations would have been. I don't know where they finished in the league the year before. Um, But yeah, fourth and third.
Yeah. Okay. So he's got a sort of history of finishing high in the league based on a sort of 3-year career as a manager.
Pretty
Maybe I'm
much, yeah.
forgetting
Yeah.
something he did earlier, but as far as
No,
I'm,
Anderlecht was his first proper
yeah.
manager job, I think.
So I suppose there's not longevity there, but there is a high enough sample size to say, okay, there is something to his game.
Yeah,
Like
there's a
he's,
bit of consistency. He's not
yeah,
he's not had a complete
it's
failure
not
of
a
a
one
job.
season wonder, but
No,
it's not yet to that level where you're like, okay, he is a very good manager.
yeah. To be fair, in the 2016 they won the league. 2017 they finished third. 2018 they finished sixth. 2019 they finished eighth. And then Company's first season they finished fourth. So it seems like he kind of stopped a bit of a downward trajectory and stabilized them a little bit.
Yeah, that's pretty
Um,
good,
so yeah,
especially with low resources. So
yeah,
sensible argument.
yeah. So it seems like he's a promising manager, and yeah, like you say, I mean, he hasn't got Premier League experience as a manager, but he obviously knows the league as a player. Um, Played under Pep, which is always
Yeah,
gonna.
and under was it wasn't Mancini, was it? Who was the next guy
Yeah, he
after
played
him?
under Mancini
Did he?
and
Oh
some Spanish guy,
no, do you know? No, the old guy,
Pellegrini.
Pellegrini. That's it.
Yeah, he was. Oh no, was he not? Was he like Chilean or something? South American.
Um, Argentinian or something like that, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. At City, he's played under tons of good managers, hasn't he? So
Yeah. And then final team, Luton. I don't know about these guys. I mean, if they keep Nakambra, they're definitely staying up.
I mean, they have in the championship. I think their wage bill is the fifth lowest or something like that. So they're going to struggle financially big time. Like they're one of the poorer teams in the championship.
Mm.
Same goes with Coventry. Actually, I think they were both in the sixth or seventh lowest wage bills in the championship, and they're both in the playoff final. Which another reason it was a cool playoff final. But yeah, Luton will struggle massively financially, but then
Well, the influx of
can't rule
cash
them out.
from coming into the Premier League
Yeah,
from that kind of final, was it worth these days? Like 180 million, something like that,
yeah,
140. That will be an amount of money that they've never experienced before in terms of like a one season package,
yeah,
like sort of revenue, prize money sort of thing. So it depends how they handle it, because if they can, emulate the Brightons or the Brentfords of the world and make a few smart, cheap signings and put the rest into stadium development and facilities,
mm,
maybe they could use their tiny size and mini super compact stadium where everyone's right on the pitch, and use that to their advantage and sort of build some kind of fortress there where they perhaps just scrape sort of 17th, 16th.
yeah. Like if you look at Forest this year and their reliance on their home form, even though their squad's been pretty ropey. I mean, they obviously spent a lot of money, but their squad's been all over the place. But their stadium is, the atmosphere there is insane. And it's quite small, but it's one of those small stadiums which has a really tight, uncomfortable atmosphere for away teams. And
Yeah,
Luton will definitely recreate that. Um,
you'd
and yeah,
expect.
it basically does come down to how they spend their money, doesn't it? You can't rule them out. They'll probably have the weakest squad in the league, but then people said that about Bournemouth this year. People
Yeah,
said
no one gave
Fulham had no
Bournemouth a chance of
chance.
staying up.
Yeah, everyone says that about the teams that get promoted is they've got a crap squad,
But
they've
then
got no
again,
chance.
Bournemouth are a team that have been there before multiple times.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, Luton are definitely a massive unknown because they've just not been in. I don't think they've been in the Premier League since 1992 or something. But then there's always good teams that fuck up, like Leicester, Everton, Leeds. All
Southampton even.
Leicester especially have Southampton. They've all got good
Southampton
players.
got their
They've all spent
maths wrong, I
money.
think.
Yeah. So Luton have got as much a chance as anyone really. They just got to rely on a few other teams being equally shit as Leicester
Yeah.
have,
Well,
as
because
Everton
we
have.
saw so many teams perform so shit this year to the point where there was like a 11 team relegation scrap at one point. I think
Yeah.
that we could see a mass sort of turnaround next year where a good maybe 4 or 5 of those teams really get their act together and go, okay, we need an
Yeah.
actual plan in place
Yeah.
because what we're doing, this sort of just left, right, centre, grab whatever's next in line sort of thing, and not really having like a plan isn't working because even though, they thought, yeah, for example, Palace thought they were doing great with Vieira, thought they had like a really nice up and coming team, but not having a plan in place in terms of exactly how Vieira's going to play with this team and how the transfers are going to fit in, you saw all their strikers pretty much not perform to the levels you'd like because clearly the team hasn't been built around how are you going to score goals with the strikers you've got because none of them have played well in their systems. They've scored a
Yeah.
few goals here and there, but there's just not been a coherent sort of style on the pitch until Roy Hodgson's come in. And I think maybe he's realised the striker isn't the focal point of this team, and it's that middle three in Elise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It was pretty simple, wasn't it? When Hodgson came in, it was basically like he told told his most creative players to get more of the ball, have a bit more freedom, get more shots off, and they suddenly just started scoring more goals. I think.
yeah, I think sometimes when you limit talented players like that, no one was, at a point where they hadn't realised the talent of those three players together and what it should be. And
Mm,
whether it's Zaha, Eze, and Elise, of course. Um, and so I think if you just let them play, if they have that much talent, which it seems like they might do,
mm,
you're probably going to be better off than trying to fix them into a certain system where you limit certain aspects of their game.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think a lot of those teams will improve. I think it was a bit of an anomaly of a year in terms of like Wolves just started so badly for no apparent reason. Like they should never
Yeah,
have been that bad based on the players they had. Same with West Ham. Forest, I think, probably will improve. I don't know what the upper limit of Steve Cooper as a manager is, but they've invested in so many players and quite
yeah.
a lot of good players.
I
To be
think he
honest, I
has
think
more of a plan for his squad now.
yeah. And as it settles, they'll be a bit better next year. Um, Everton, if they stay up, could be a better team with Sean Dyche if Dyche gets a few signings.
I
Uh,
I don't know about Everton because everyone said when he came in, this squad's perfect for him. This is like his dream squad.
well,
Um,
kind of, yeah, but also like it is incredibly thin. He's
well,
not
it's
had
a
Calvert Lewin
yeah,
most of the time.
yeah. I said not his dream squad in terms of like if he could pick anyone, but in terms of like being a fit for his style of play. Like multiple, previous players in there, uh, and in terms of solid, battle-hardy defenders, hard-working midfielders and wingers. He had all of that, and
Yeah,
defensive fullbacks. It was all there for him. It was just Calvert-Lewin being out that's probably been the
yeah.
biggest
I don't know. They're pretty hard to
shortfall.
predict, but he's proven that he can be a fairly solid Premier League manager. So I feel like they'll improve. They won't be this bad again next year as long as they make a few good signings.
Yeah, well, this is if they stay in the league. Of course, we don't know until was it about 6:30 later today who
Hmm.
exactly is going to be in the Premier League next season.
Nope.
So,
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'd like Everton to stay up. I'd also quite like Leicester to stay up.
which
As long as it's not Leeds, I'm
who do you
fine.
think will stay up?
Um, I think. Let me have a look. Everton. I can't see them losing to Bournemouth at home.
See, I
Um,
can see Bournemouth doing something away because they've done it to multiple teams. They've done it to Arsenal.
Yeah,
They've
but
done Spurs.
Everton are Goodison on the last day. You know,
But Bournemouth are that team. They'll look at them like that, like everyone does, and then Bournemouth will come back at you, and they will sting because that's what they do.
I don't see it. I don't see it. I could see them drawing, and then Leicester. If Leicester win and Everton draw, Leicester would stay up. Um, I could see that happening. I could. Leicester's really hard to predict. I could see them losing quite badly, really embarrassingly. I could also see
I
them.
could see some Leicester magic keeping them up.
Yeah,
Some Dean Smith final day whisperings. The
yeah.
morning
No,
of
I could definitely see Leicester
the
winning.
all-day breakfast at the Hilton, whispering in each player's ear.
Yeah.
It's your day today, buddy. You're
Yeah,
gonna save us. And then
Leicester. I
Madison,
think
he
Leicester
just
will
comes up and touches him on the
win.
shoulder, and he's like, "Son,
Madison's done, man. Madison's not the big game guy. The pressure gets to him.
yeah, you think?"
Yeah, he's just not performed. There's been so much pressure on Leicester, and I think he works better when he's got more freedom and he can get more of the ball and he's more comfortable. But I don't think a relegation scrap is his kind of ideal
Well, it's no
position
one's
to be in.
ideal, is it? But
No, but
the best
some
coaches
players
would just
grasp
elevate
it.
a team beyond that.
The
Sorry,
best coaches.
the best coaches would elevate the team beyond that
What do
relegation
you
scrap.
mean?
Like just with their ability to put their style of play on a team and to really just change a club around in one season. Like managers like Guardiola could do that. Klopp could do that.
Oh
Unai
yeah.
Emery's done it. De Zerbi didn't completely change, but even improved an already good system everyone thought was down to the manager. So I think the best managers do switch it around fairly quick, and because he hasn't done that,
What,
you
Dean Smith?
yeah, I think you have to sort of doubt his quality now
Oh yeah,
at,
no, I
at
don't
this point.
think. I've, I think he's. I mean, it's hard to judge him. He is realistically, he's a lower Premier League, upper Championship level manager, isn't he?
Well, that's what he was when he got the Norwich job and when he got this job. I was surprised he got the Leicester job, to be honest.
Yeah,
After
it's only
Norwich,
interim though, isn't it? He'll be gone at the end of the season, presumably, even if they stay up, because he's not really
yeah,
done that well.
and he didn't do great at Norwich.
No, he did bad at Norwich.
Yeah,
But then,
so you
with
got
a
to
bit of
wonder.
context, Norwich didn't really improve after they got rid of him. To be fair, so
Yeah,
Norwich finished 13th. I'm pretty sure they were higher than that when he got sacked at Norwich. So maybe
okay.
there's problems run a bit deeper
He's
at
not
Norwich.
terrible, but I don't.
No, he's not.
It's
He's
hard to
not.
say he's good either at the moment.
He's not a great manager by any means. But
I mean, he did good things with us, but maybe that was
he
because
did
he just
amazing
put it
things
all
with us.
through Grealish.
He had a good squad, didn't he? He did have a good squad.
Mm,
And he did rely on Grealish maybe too much, but at the same time, it takes a good manager to get the best out of his players. We won 10 games in a row to get in the playoffs. He
yeah,
won the playoff final, and then he kept us up with a squad that was pretty mismatched at that point, wasn't it?
yeah.
Had to
It was
sign loads and loads of new players.
140 million in new players, wasn't it?
Yeah,
But that
had to
wasn't like
like
four or five great players that we should have done.
it was like a whole squad, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
Half
was
that
like
promotion squad
13 players, I
retired or
think.
were on loan, and then we had to basically replace loads and loads of players.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he did really
So
well with Villa, no doubt, but I think that was kind of a special circumstance in some way.
who you're saying Everton to stay up there?
Um, well, that's really tough because if I think Leicester will win, I think Leeds might even win, but their goal difference is really bad. So even if they win, I don't think they'll stay up. But I think Leicester will win, and I think Everton will get a result. But if Leicester win and Everton draw, Leicester stay up and Everton go down on their goal difference. So I do think Leicester will win, but I can't decide whether Everton are going to win or draw.
I've already decided that Bournemouth have got Sting in their tail, Leicester
So
are going to
Everton
do
are
some
losing to
magic,
Bournemouth.
and Everton will set the best example yet as to financial mismanagement within football when it comes to recruitment and everything else.
Fair.
And it needs to happen,
Yeah,
I think.
it wouldn't surprise me if Everton went down, but I just Goodison Park is different gravy, man. When they're in a relegation scrap, did you watch their game last year when they stayed up in the last day? Pickford
Um,
was fucking insane.
I think I watched the
Like
highlights here.
that guy, high pressure games. Pickford is just on another level.
Yeah.
Um, Richarlison saved in that game though, and they haven't got a player like of that quality anymore who's gonna grab the game and win it for him. Maybe McNeil. I mean, he's right, but he's not as good as Richarlison. Like the squad is kind of worse this time round. But I just think Goodison. I can't see them losing. I just can't see them losing. I can
They,
see them
they
winning
did
or
mess up
drawing.
Brighton, to be fair.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I think 3-2 is my guess. I think it's going to be another sort of back and forth game.
I just don't. I don't know if there's any basis why you think this.
Yeah, but
Like,
if you were to predict the Bundesliga today, or yesterday, sorry, you would have predicted Dortmund to probably beat Mainz and to take the
oh yeah,
Bundesliga title, but it didn't happen.
no, weird things do happen in football.
So, there's not always a final day fairy tale for these guys, right?
No,
Someone's got to take the fall, and I think there will be in such a high pressure environment, so dramatic. I think there will be an upset, and I think that will be Bournemouth beating Everton and Leicester beating West Ham and Leicester surviving.
fair play. I like that scenario. I'd rather Leicester stay up, probably.
Yeah. I also hope Leeds beat Tottenham,
Me
but
too. Yeah,
I don't think that's going to keep
still
them
go
up.
down.
Yeah.
No, I want them to go down, but I do want them to win.
You can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. No, we need Leeds to win, really. How are you feeling about a Brighton game?
I think I'm probably feeling the same as a lot of Villa fans. Excited, but also like terrified
Yeah,
because it's Brighton, who we've beaten and can be beaten by big score lines when it's not their day. Um, but will Villa do that? We did it in a similar scenario against Newcastle, but we were the only team to have really done that to Newcastle.
yeah,
So I just wonder what's going to happen against Brighton,
yeah. I
who
don't know.
probably have a better style of play, more attacking style of play, sort of probably similar to Arsenal's style of play, you'd probably say. And well, Arsenal beat us 4-2. So
Yeah, yeah.
there
I
is
don't know.
that.
I mean,
But at the same
they've got
time, I
nothing to
think
play for, you
yeah,
know.
it's the quality of player is different as well. Like they
Yeah,
do have underrated quality players that could be worth millions and millions in the future, but they need that development. They're not there yet. So
yeah.
the tome
I
is
can
there,
I can
obviously.
back us keeping them out. To be honest, I think a lot of while their build up, their attacking build up, their system is really impressive. They're quite wasteful when I've seen them. Like Matoma is amazing at going past players, but he's not that composed when it comes to final ball. And then you look at their strikers, none of them are that prolific. So,
We'll have to work on. We'll have to be focusing on our offside trap. I think
oh yeah,
that's going to be
yeah.
huge.
Matoma's going to be sitting right in between like Conser and Cash and just constantly trying to break that. But yeah,
Yeah. Luckily, Konza's on that side because I back Konza against Matoma, but I don't know if I'd back Mings against Matoma.
mm. Yeah, I kind of agree. I think I'd take Conser in a one-on-one. I think over Mings. Mings is a bit clumsy. I can see like if Mings got stuck with Matoma, I think he'd just get sent off at some point. dicked one too many times and then stick a leg out and get sent off or something.
Yeah, well, he was close against Liverpool, wasn't he?
Yeah, Mings is better in the box defending deep, but I'd rather
Yeah.
have Konsa in a one-on-one.
I think that's why it'd be really good in the back three because you could have like him and Carlos holding back. You could have Konza pushing up into that temporary DM role
Mm,
once the team try and transition if they hoof it long or anything like that. Um, and then you have wing backs in Cash and Moreno, who
yeah,
they're still your sort of fullbacks in a defensive position, but uh, most of the time they have three players behind them rather than just two, which gives them a little bit more freedom to push on, which
yeah,
we both know Moreno's brilliant at, and Cash isn't so bad at when he's on form either.
yeah. Shush. Um,
But I don't
yeah.
know if we would ever move to a back three like that.
No, I don't think we would. I don't think Emery's ever really played one consistently anyway.
Yeah.
So
The only thing that makes me think we could is the fact that he kind of likes that right back to tuck in anyway and create a sort of back three while Moreno pushes on.
true.
And so if he decided he wanted Konza in there, who's more solid than Young or Cash,
Yeah,
and sort of
and he's
play it as
quite
a back
flexible
three.
manager, isn't he? It's not like
Yeah,
he's not open to new ideas. He's not like completely rigid. So
yeah.
I could see us trialing something like that. That would be
But
cool. I think I'd
not
like
on the
to see
final
it.
day of the season. That's the only
No, no,
thing.
no, no,
Yeah.
no.
So
Fuck.
final
I really don't know
prediction.
what to predict. I don't feel that nervous because I do feel like Tottenham won't beat Leeds. Uh,
We're gonna worry about Brentford too. What are
yeah,
they?
but
Are they
then
one
well,
or
I don't
two
think they're going to beat
points
City either.
behind us? They
Yeah,
could,
they
you
need to
know.
beat. They
I
need to
wouldn't
win.
be surprised if they did on the final day like this.
I would.
Uh, yeah, 2 points behind, so we would have to lose.
Yeah, and they are at
I
home. To
I
be
think we can
fair,
win. I'll back us to get the 3 points.
yeah, I think we can win. I'm not convinced that we will. Like, I'm pretty, you know,
I'm gonna
I'm
say
not confident, but I think we definitely can win.
2-0.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. I could see that as well. I could see us keeping them out. Like I said, I think that a lot of their forward players are not that prolific, and we've been defending really well recently. We're playing at home. Emi Martinez is on good form. I love the offside trap with Martinez playing really high up. Like he's actually really good at sweeping balls.
Yeah.
Um, oh my god, grow up. Yeah. So yeah, no, I reckon we'll win.
Yeah. No. I'm. Yeah. 2-0. That's my prediction.
Fair play.
I'm gonna say there's gonna be a Watkins goal, and there's gonna be a Buendia goal.
Ooh, nice.
What's your
I
score prediction?
reckon Jacob Ramsey is going to score.
Well, 1-0.
No, I think. I don't want to pick the same as you, but I do think 2-0 is pretty likely. Maybe three. Maybe I'll go three.
Oh, 3-0 from Matt.
Yeah,
Goal scorers.
Jacob Ramsey. I'll also go with Buendia and
Same
Tyrone
Moreno.
Mings. Tyrone
Oh,
Mings.
Tyrone Mings. That's brave.
Moreno's injured, man.
Oh yeah. Well, I hope she'd say him so that I could win that. But anyway, 3-0 and 2-0 predictions. So if we are, at all knowledgeable about football, then we should be in for a good day today.
Which we're not.
Yeah, maybe not. So, what do you think Brentford are gonna do against City?
Lose.
You think they'll lose?
I thought they were away, but they are at home. I wouldn't be surprised, to be fair, like you say, because they're at home. I wouldn't be surprised if they won. But
I might.
you know,
I'm gonna
City,
say they win 2-1.
That's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah.
That is pretty. Imagine if we lost out on seventh to Brentford. That would be
No, but
really gutting.
I think we'll win, obviously, so we wouldn't.
Yeah. No, I think they'll put up a good fight, but I think City have got too much. That City are not the kind of team to take a foot off the gas just because they've already won the league. I think they'll go all out.
Well,
They'll
in
want to
terms of
win
their starting
comprehensively.
11, I think they will be rotating a lot.
Yeah, but it'll still be strong, and I still think they'll want to win. And I think, if they're losing half time at Brentford, I think Pep will still bollock them, even though they've already won the league. Um,
But Chelsea did get more and more against them in that second half and just couldn't finish it or couldn't create any meaningful chances. Uh, but they were transitioning a lot, winning the ball back a lot, sort of getting into the box in a
yeah,
decent amount of times. So if a team like
yeah,
Brentford is given that same opportunity, I think they would take those chances.
true. Yeah, um, yeah. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Brentford got a result, but I think City is still more likely to win. Um,
Main thing is Tottenham need to finish ninth.
yeah, that would be nice. I do. I genuinely think they'll lose. I reckon they'll lose 1-0. Or they'll lose 1-0 or they'll draw 1-1 or something like that. But I don't know if they'll win. Ellen Road, hard place. It'll be loud. Spurs are shit.
I think 1-1's a very smart, realistic scoreline to go for
Yeah.
because
Well,
you
yeah.
know
When I said
Harry
1-1,
Kane's
when
going
I
to nick
said
one
1-0, I
nil
just thought, yeah, that's literally what I thought. I said,
and Leeds don't look
oh,
like winning because
no.
it's
Yeah, I think Leeds will like shithouse a set piece goal. Uh,
the
they'll be
crowd will
up
go
for it because the
wild.
crowd will be so up for it.
Yeah,
But like I said, yeah, when I said 1-0, I then thought actually Harry Kane pretty much always scores, doesn't he?
yeah,
So
might as well back him.
yeah, 1-1 seems likely.
I think Leicester
Um,
will win
3-0.
3-1 against West Ham.
Who's scoring? Vardy
Ooh,
hat trick
who's scoring? I
for
think
old time's sake.
Iheanacho gets two.
He doesn't play anymore,
Yeah, but I think he'll get a game.
but he won't.
I think he will.
He won't. He'll be on the bench.
All right, but I think he'll get a game. I think Barnes scores. I think Madison gets two assists, and then I think Vardy gets an assist as well
All right.
when he comes on later in the game.
All right. Yeah, I reckon they'll win 2 or 3-0. Vardy will score. Vardy and Barnes 2-0. That's what I'm saying.
Ooh, so I'm more
Maybe a
confident in Leicester than you are, and you're more confident in Villa than I am.
yeah. Seems like that. I just think I mean, how can you be confident in Leicester? Really, they've been so bad.
I just think they'll just pull out some magic rabbit.
Okay, yeah. You're feeling the magic
Yeah,
today for Leicester. Yeah, fair enough.
I'm
Yeah,
seeing
fair enough.
Everton
West Ham have got
close.
nothing to play for, and West Ham have got a European final to worry about, haven't they, as well? So they might be resting
I can't wait
some
to
players.
watch the carnage when Everton burn. Not because of it's not like I hate Everton or anything. Just I want examples to be made of clubs that mismanage in football because
Fair enough.
it's like it creates a huge gap in the Premier League, for example, where
Hmm.
teams that do it suddenly start rising to the top, but then for some reason most teams just seem to spend on the sort of oldest, most expensive players they can get their hands on,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't work. And if you don't have any real plan to what you're going to do on the pitch, and you just spend loads of money, especially if they've broken rules as they're suspected of doing, alleged to have done, just it deserves some kind of repercussion. So
Yeah. Fair play. It is. Does seem about time that Everton go down, really, doesn't it? Because they have just been mismanaged really badly.
yeah,
Um,
it happened to us when we were. I think it'll happen to them, but their rebuild's going to be way harder with if the financial implications that we're hearing about are actually uh,
yeah.
put in place. In terms of,
Yeah.
there's also that £300 million lawsuit from, I can't remember which teams. That, I think it's three teams that went down when they stayed up last season.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so it would have been, what was it, Sheffield United, Burnley, and
Norwich.
Norwich, um, suing them for like 300 million. I think, I can't remember. I heard something along those lines, because if they had financially cheated, that's might have been what kept them in the league at the end
Right.
last season, technically.
Yeah.
So they're suing them for the amount of revenue they lost by falling out of the Premier League, basically. Um, so yeah, if that happens, if they have to pay fines because they've broken financial rules, and dropping out of the Premier League, having that new stadium built, being either in debt for that or having just spent loads of money on that they had and that the ability to spend, I don't know. It's gonna be a tough time for
Yeah.
Everton.
It's a shame. I want them. I like Everton as a club.
Yeah, they've always felt like a sort of old rival in a way, just because
Kind
they've
of.
both
Yeah.
played so many games
Villa
in
and
such
Everton.
a
I think Villa and Everton is the most played
fixture.
game
Yeah,
in English football or something.
yeah.
Um, and they're just. I like. They've got a nice old traditional stadium. They're obviously getting rid of it, but they're just kind of a. I don't know. Just quite like them as a club. Um,
Always the underdogs.
yeah. Yeah. They're one of those teams that's kind of trying to break the top four and then the top five and the top six, and they're always there or thereabouts. They've had some good teams, some good players over the years. So it'd be a shame if they. It'd be really a real shame if they kind of dissolved, because there is a bit of a risk of that. The same as when Villa went down, and
Yeah.
if we didn't get saved by our current owners, we would have been properly in the shit. But the thing with Everton is that they're quite similar to Villa in the fact that they are quite attractive to potential owners. If somebody,
Mm.
if some rich guy fancies owning a football club, Everton with a brand new stadium about to be built or halfway built, with a massive fan base and loads of history, if somebody with loads of money fancied a challenge, they'd be, there's a lot of potential. Like they've got a massive ceiling.
Yeah.
So it's not like a lot of clubs just wouldn't be attractive investments because they don't have infrastructure or fan base and stuff like that. Whereas Everton have all that if the right person comes along.
Could
So
they have a Spursy feeling to them, though,
how do you mean?
with
What,
a brand
eternally
new
doomed?
stadium and just having this sort of constant underperformance of where everyone thinks the club should be? Then
Yeah.
could they perhaps just lose the belief to the point where they suffer these long-term dips because they're just
Well, I
so
don't know.
distraught?
Villa could have had that as well. But I think all it takes is some kind of positivity from the ownership, and then a year or two re-establishing yourself, and then you can kind of rebuild. It will take a year or two where everything will be in turmoil. They'll get rid of their whole squad, get a whole new squad, probably go through a few managers. But if they get the right owners, there's no reason they can't, just kind of start again. Um, from a position of having a big fan base, loads of support, and a great stadium. I think like
Mm.
if the right owners came along, there's no reason they can't rebuild like we did. Um, but yeah, at the same time, they could be eternally if the right owners don't come along
What
or
do you
they
think?
get it wrong,
Uh,
they could be stuck.
yeah. What do you think Bournemouth will look like next season?
Hard to predict, man. I mean, I didn't expect them to do anywhere near as well as they did this season.
I think they're going to improve again next year.
Yeah, they seem to have decent transfer policy, which
Yeah.
sets them apart from a lot of teams. That's where most teams go wrong, really, isn't it? Is they sign shit players
Yeah. I think
that don't
they
fit the
they need
system and
maybe
stuff.
a couple of fullbacks, possibly a DM, and then they've got a decent squad that can actually do a sort of Fulham type thing,
Yeah,
sort of overperform, yeah, but get in a good position for the season, maybe
yeah,
top 10 or just below.
yeah. Yeah, I think they're. what's his name? Gary O'Neill has
Yeah.
done a good job. He seems to be a pretty competent manager. They do seem to sign good players. So yeah, I could see him. I could see him sort of competing in the sort of Crystal Palace kind of bracket.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think Zaha leaves Palace?
don't know.
He's got the option of potentially one last chance at European football, or
Yeah,
stay at Palace and become a legend. Maybe if they're lucky, get European football there somehow.
yeah. I feel like he'll stay. To be honest, I don't think there's many teams who are already in the European places that will take him now.
I think
Um,
if he's going to stay, he needs to sign up quick because if he leaves it till the very end of July, what was it, June? Very end of June
June probably. Yeah,
to sign on for next year or beyond. I think it will be very clear to fans that he just didn't have any
yeah,
offers and so decided
yeah,
to stick around,
yeah.
which I don't think will sit well with them. To know that he was ready to just drop him,
Yep.
I think they'd understand on like a level where I kind of understood with Grealish, but like it's still not nice if they then turn around and stay. I mean, if you do a Fabian Delph, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I
he
think
could
he'll
sign on
stay.
and then get sold. But I think that
Yeah,
would be more on Crystal Palace than.
I think he'll stay. Yeah, I think I could see him maybe going to like Tottenham or something if he wanted another challenge. But I just think I don't know. I just
I
think
don't
he's
think
probably
Tottenham make that move, to be honest.
no.
I don't think so.
How much do you think he cost, or is his contract? So his contract up
Yeah,
this year?
yeah.
Oh, right. I mean, surely he's going to sign, and then even if Palace want, even if he wants to leave, surely they're going to get him to sign a new contract so that he doesn't go for free, right?
Well, I mean, that's kind of like saying surely they're not going to intentionally lose the game. Like, of course they don't want to lose Zaha, but if Zaha wants to go, then he's not going to sign.
Mm, maybe, but I don't know. Sometimes players sign contracts knowing full well they're going to be sold. Like that's what Grealish did. Grealish signed a contract with a massive release clause, knowing that he'd be going, but he wanted the club to get money for him. And you know,
Yeah, but Zaha's not in that position, is he? He's not had a kind of season where everyone's clambering after him. He's not of the age where everyone's desperate to get him into
no,
their Champions League side. He's at
no,
his sort of end of his peak years potentially of what was a very good to above average Premier League player, depending on the season, for a consistent period of time. So yeah, he could contribute in the European stage, especially if it was Europa League or Conference League, maybe Champions League, depending on what team he goes to. If he were to get an offer, and I think he just doesn't have the options to make that kind of risky move. I think he would end up just sealing his fate at Crystal Palace because no one would pay the release clause if it was of any decent value, and then
probably
Crystal
yeah,
Palace would probably expect a longer contract signing if they're going to have that release clause in there. And then I think
yeah.
he would just end up condemning himself to staying at Crystal Palace. So I think he will leave, and I think he'll go for free. But to where is?
You think he will go?
Yeah, I think he will.
Interesting. I just,
Maybe.
where would he go though?
Well, I would say Villa, but I just don't see it happening.
I don't
Um,
know.
I would like to see him at Brighton.
Brighton.
Yeah,
Brighton aren't going to sign Zaha.
they
They're
might.
smart.
They might do
Smart
like
for
a
that.
2-year deal where he receives like same wages he was on at Crystal Palace, or maybe slightly better, just not astronomical,
I reckon
and
he's
just
on loads of money at
offer him the
Palace.
chance to play Europa League football, be a first name on the team sheet alongside players like Matoma and Ferguson. Maybe they sign more players as
I
well.
think Brighton are way too smart to make that signing, man.
No, I know they are a very smart club. I know they are well run. I know they buy young players, but they do occasionally go for slightly older players. Obviously, they don't normally go for 30-year-olds, but I think Zaha's the kind of 30-year-old that you'd want to take a chance on in Brighton's position, where they have such a great settled system that's for attacking football, where
Yeah,
he could slot in as such a good technical player. He would fit in there very nicely, and he could help them survive or maybe even push on in a European competition next year.
yeah,
That's why I say it.
yeah. Well, they're rivals as well, though.
What, Crystal Palace and Brighton?
Yeah,
Are they?
yeah.
On what level are they rivals? Like us and West Brom, or us and
Well,
Wolves, us and Birmingham
no, it's
City?
a pretty. It's a. I mean, it's not as fierce as like proper inner city rivalry like they're Birmingham, but they're each other's biggest rivals.
In the Prem?
No, just in general.
Isn't Southampton? No, wait.
No, that's the wrong side of London.
Brighton is South Coast, though. Yeah.
Yeah, but Palace are like really um, is right at the south end of London. It's not actually geographically that close, but for some reason they're each other's closest rivals.
Huh. I don't think it's enough of a rivalry to stop him from doing that, but
Maybe not.
and I don't think he will go there. But I would like to see it, and I don't think it's out of the question for Brighton to do something like that this season, because they've gone from absolutely no European football and probably what you'd say is a relatively thin squad, unless you count every youth player as a potential star at Brighton.
Yeah,
Um, which I mean you could, but I'd still say that the squad's relatively thin for a European challenge.
yeah, definitely.
So they're going to need to bring players in, and players of that sort of quality, where they're not going to have too much of a financial risk. I think
Yeah,
would be ideal.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more it seems like not that bad of an idea because they, like you say, they need loads of depth, and he's a quality option. Um,
Yeah. What do you think
I feel
Newcastle are
like
going to do?
crash and burn.
Oh,
Nah, they're not. I hope they will, but they're not gonna. Don't know. It's so hard, isn't it? Because now there's City, Arsenal, United, Liverpool. Are always going to be there or thereabouts. Tottenham depends who they hire as a manager, but they could have a good season next season. Chelsea have got Poch and they've got an insane squad and so much money. You've got to say they're going to be somewhere around there. So it's like so difficult.
I think Tottenham will get top 10, but I wouldn't bet on them getting above like 7th or 8th.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Yeah, Newcastle will be above them. I reckon Newcastle will be in the same bracket they are now, basically. I don't think they'll have as good a season because I think Liverpool will improve and Chelsea will improve quite a lot. And then Brighton will probably improve and hopefully Villa will improve as well. And there'll be a bit more competition for like fourth, fifth, sixth.
I'd be very surprised if Villa didn't improve.
Yeah,
If looking at it
yeah,
from the point of, yeah, we were good with maybe not the best underlying numbers, but with the situation being he comes in, he brings in one left back, which doesn't really change our system a whole lot, and all of a sudden we're, you know, third, fourth best team in the league for half a season, or just
hmm
over half a season. So you have to think, all right, give him a whole summer of transfers, particularly if it's as much people are saying 150, 200 million plus player
yeah,
sales. I don't see
yeah,
a way, and a pre-season, of course. I don't see a way that we don't improve.
yeah, yeah. No, will improve. Brighton will Brighton will either improve or they'll be like in the shout for fifth, sixth, maybe fourth. So it's hard to predict exactly what Newcastle will be in, but they'll be in the bracket with probably Villa, Brighton,
I think if
maybe
they
Tottenham,
sign
maybe Chelsea.
a quality left back, sort of Rafael Guerrero or someone like that, if they sign a big DM, someone like a Garte or Sangare, and then a creative winger or midfielder, you're looking at a really good team.
Yeah, Yeah, they've kind of got unlimited potential, really. What I could see happening is them having a similar season to what they've done this year, and then they will get rid of Eddie Howe and get a proper elite manager in. Like, not that Howe's not a brilliant manager, obviously, but they'll go from Howe level to like Klopp kind of level manager
I
at
think you
some point.
keep Howe there for now, like unless things go wrong. I think you keep Howe in because he's one of those managers that went away, studied much greater managers, and tried to take things from their game to improve. So he's clearly someone that's got potential for growth and knows how to do it. So I think they'd let him stay in the job and keep doing what he's doing, with the idea that maybe he is an elite manager, or he's developing to one
Maybe, yeah,
at their club, and
but
then
they've
having
got the
some
money
sort of
that they don't
dynasty.
need to be that patient, you know.
Um, yeah, but I think they're trying to toe a line between the kind of typical PSG style, Man City style spend and get as best as possible, fast as possible, which they did sort of do in those first few years, rather than the more approach, sustainable approach that Pep has, especially with his recruitment and the way he beds players in. Um, I think that would be a lot more hasty. I don't think they'll do that because I think they're trying to toe a line where they're trying to be smart and sustainable, like a Brighton or a Brentford, but they're also trying to spend money. So what they'll end up doing is some kind of a couple of big deals, but not huge deals, uh, where they're sure of the quality of the player and what they'll bring to the squad, and then
Yeah,
maybe some cheaper stuff around it, just to keep slowly building it.
yeah, I do agree. They're not. It's not going to be a PSG level trajectory, but I mean, maybe not next year. I think they'll give Howe. I think Howe will have two, maybe more, maybe 2 seasons rather than one. But either way, at some point, if they continue to make pretty elite signings, in 2 years' time, they're going to have a squad that, with the right manager, will probably be able to compete for Premier Leagues. And if Howe's not doing that, then I think they'll get.
Well, yeah, but that's the assumption, right? Is if Howe's not doing it, I think he will do it.
Yeah, that is my assumption.
So
Yeah,
you think he won't be able to do that? Is basically what you're saying. You're
I
not
don't think
saying the
Howe
club
will be
will outgrow
challenging for
Howe.
titles. No. Yeah, I think at some point Howe's the perfect manager for this transition, and he'll build the squad. He'll continue to get him in, if not top four, top six. But I think they will, when the squad's at the point they think it's ready to challenge for titles, they'll get in another manager.
Would you say similar things, or maybe not the same things, but similar, slightly died down sort of whisperings about Villa and Emery?
No, Emery's going to win us the league, mate.
See, I think we've discussed this briefly before because a lot of the clubs he's been at where he's been seen as the most successful, he's been in that kind of Sevilla, Villarreal kind of club where you're competing for Europa Leagues, you're high up in the league, but you're not necessarily, you know, ever chasing the title, or
Yeah,
rarely even a Champions League club. I think we've seen him do that mostly, but then we have seen him at PSG get the highest win percentage of any. Is it any
yeah,
manager that's been there, and of his
yeah,
career?
yeah,
So he knows how to manage team and set up a team to win a league, whether it's a farmers league, quote marks, or not. Um, he still did it, and whether PSG should be doing that or not, he did that, and at a better level than most other managers have done.
yeah.
And it's a really hard place to go and manage those kinds of personalities that
It is.
aren't
Yeah,
going
I
to
think
buy
it's
into
hard to judge
his.
his time at PSG, really.
Yeah, because pretty much every manager's failed at PSG. So
Yeah, it's actually really hard to judge Emery in you know to kind of assess whether he's a manager capable of winning the Premier League,
yeah,
because he was at Arsenal, but they were in a massive transition and they were never had a squad anywhere near good enough to win the Premier League. And then the other clubs he's been at, like you say, have been Europa, Champions League level clubs, but never powerhouses, except PSG, which is kind of an anomaly in terms of management, because it's a pretty
Yeah,
unique league. Um, so it's hard to say. I feel like, based on his achievements as a manager so far in the clubs he's been at, I don't see why there's any reason you would say he's not good enough. But that's not to say he definitely is. I'm
yeah.
not really sure. Um,
I think
don't know.
if it is hard to say, and it's hard to judge what he's going to do next season because it's going to be a very different squad. The aim of the year is going to be very different. There's going to be a lot more games. Um, but what I'm trying to get at is I would have hoped to have seen more of an improvement in the underlying numbers to be convinced of the longer term sort of longevity of the
No, really
football that we're playing in terms of like the pattern of results. I
interesting.
definitely still think defensively and from a quality perspective we should look to be at least level with or beat most opponents in the Premier League. But I don't think uh, that we do that to a level where we can then expect to go and beat our rivals like a Brighton or a Newcastle or a Chelsea. I think we'd still suffer to an extent against those teams unless we play a perfect counter-attacking style. Unless Emery has been limiting the team in that sense to for a better focus on maintaining clean sheets, just
Yeah,
because of the squad he's got right now, and he doesn't want to sort of impose a style that's going to be
yeah.
too difficult to
Well,
implement.
at PSG, he played possession football, but again, it's hard to judge because he had a squad which was miles better than basically any other team in that league. So it's hard to really judge. But I think if he's got a squad capable of it, he definitely likes to keep the ball, definitely likes to control games. I do think, he's been kind of realistic and pragmatic with this squad because he's not had a lot of his own players and he's aware of the limitations of it.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't see why, given the right players, there's any reason he's not capable of implementing a more sort of control-based style, which would where a style where you'd feel a bit more assured about winning a game rather than
Mm.
kind of having to rely on a clean sheet kind of thing.
Where I'd make the
Um,
comparison is a team like Newcastle or a team like Brighton, and I know those are very sort of they are literally our rivals, and so envying your rivals could just be seen in a form of paranoia. But I say it because Newcastle went from relegation to a completely different looking team in every single way, and to having nearly 40 goal difference, is it, and being third in the league.
yeah,
And that's like a total transformation where it's like they're outperforming the level of their players, and if they add to that more, then you'd expect them to possibly sustain it over the long term. Because
yeah,
with the squad they've got right now, you wouldn't, right? And it's the fact that
no,
you know they're going to be continuously spending and building on it. That's why you're convinced, and because of the huge difference that's been made with that squad already, in terms of not just getting lucky, but actually implementing a new style that's looks really effective against any team it comes up against, other than Villa for some reason. Um, uh, I just think, yeah, that's why you would be more convinced about those sorts of teams than Villa because we've only on a couple of occasions actually looked like that team that's just completely got control of the game,
yeah,
can
yeah,
go through the opposition at will and score goals. It has been relatively cagey, even if we did look fairly controlled, even if you had
yeah.
confidence
I
in us
agree.
taking a clean sheet.
There is definitely a bit of an unknown element because there've been some very tight victories. There's been some victories where we've overperformed our XG. Um, yeah, I don't know. It is a bit hard to judge um,
Because our
where our
goal
level might be.
difference, I
Really.
know obviously we had the Gerrard period, but that's no excuse really. Our goal difference is the same as Spurs this season at the moment, and Spurs were supposed to be lost, a
Yeah,
disaster. So
yeah,
we're clearly not like performing at a level where you can say sort of yes they are a quality team that's just waiting for more investment in the players to take it to that next level. Um, it could go either way.
Yeah,
But I'd expect, like, I'm confident that Unai Emery has mostly been quite pragmatic with this team, like you say, and that there is a lot more up his sleeve, especially if you give him the tools to do it. So I'm inclined to think that we will challenge for at least Europa League again next year.
yeah, I think so. I don't see why. I don't see why there's any reason we, based on our results under Emery so far, including some pretty big signings, which is looking like we're going to make. I'd say I feel pretty confident in saying that we'd at least challenge for Europa League. It's pretty hard to,
Yeah,
it's actually a really difficult
especially
thing to achieve
yeah,
because of how many good teams there are in the league. But we'll be in the challenge for it, I think.
and that's Unai Emery's specialty is winning
Exactly.
European competitions or getting
Yeah. I mean, he's really, in terms of like experience and pedigree, we've got maybe the third or fourth best manager in the league. Honestly, you've got to put him ahead of Howe and De Zerbi
well, he hasn't
based on
won a
his career.
Champions League yet. So who has won a Champions League that goes ahead of him? Pep,
Pep, Klopp,
Klopp,
is it?
yeah, and Arteta is definitely doesn't count as having won the Champions League as a manager, right? Being assistant manager.
Oh no, 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 no.
Okay.
I think you put him maybe fourth in terms of um, success in the past. Probably equal with Ten Hag, maybe even better than Ten Hag. Definitely ahead of Howe and De Zerbi, behind Klopp and Pep. Uh, maybe,
Sorry, did I
maybe.
say Arteta Champions League?
Well, you said could you consider him because he won it as
No, he didn't. I meant Premier
no.
League.
Oh yeah, no, he didn't. Yeah,
I meant Premier League. I was thinking back, like, what did I just say?
yeah, no.
Sorry, go on. What
Um,
were you saying?
yeah, well, oh, did you hear that?
Yeah, the old dog.
Yeah. Um, so he's obviously behind Pep and Klopp. Ten Hag did really well with Ajax, but and he's obviously done well with United.
He
But
got
in
to a
terms of
semi-final of Champions League, just like Unai has, but Unai's won the Europa Leagues in longer career. So I put
yeah,
Unai above Ten Hag.
yeah, and
Um,
then Pochettino got to a final of a Champions League, but again, apart from that, he's not really won anything,
yeah, so Unai
which
again.
Emery has. Um,
I
who
think
else
we
is there?
could probably stick our necks out and say we've got the third best manager in the league.
At push, yeah,
Long,
based on past success,
long
yeah.
term, yeah. Um, so yeah, I think obviously some managers are showing that they could be considered in that bracket soon,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like in terms of if you're actually to rate them based on current ability, um,
or current performance.
yeah, or current performance, then De Zerbi and Howe are obviously in that conversation. Um, but yeah, I think there's no reason unless something goes drastically wrong, I don't see why we wouldn't be in the fight for Europa League places.
Yeah,
We're going to sign good players. We've got a manager who's done it a million times before. So the
and
thing with
hopefully even Champions League places.
yeah, yeah, again, don't see why not really. That would for that to happen, we'd need to have like a flawless season, and our recruitment would have to be really, really good. So sometimes the stars don't align, but again, I think
Yeah.
we'll probably have the squad and the manager to be there or thereabouts. Provided to do that, you're kind of relying on a few teams having bad seasons, which they very, very often do.
What do you think United will do next season and Arsenal?
Um, oh God, it's so hard to predict, really. I think United will push on. Ten Hag seems like a really good manager, to be honest, and he seems
Yeah.
like the kind
Well,
of
I think
manager who
they'll
doesn't put up with the
be.
bullshit of previous, like when the United makes stupid signings
Yeah.
for marketing purposes. I don't think Ten Hag will put up with that shit. I think he'll only sign players that he actually wants that improve the team. So I think they'll improve, and they'll be top four somewhere. I don't think they'll be challenging for the league, but they'll be
Well, I think if they
better than they've been.
if they get a good striker in,
Yeah, I mean,
and
if they sign Harry Kane, like
if they sign two world class or thereabouts players, sorry, yeah, if they sign two world class or thereabouts players, I think they're on that sort of 80 points plus area, which if you're on 80 points plus at some point in the league, people are talking about you for league titles. That's just what happens
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you're
true.
getting that
Yeah.
many
I mean,
points.
yeah, they've got 72. If they win their last game of the season, they'll have 75 points this year.
Yeah,
And it's pretty much been a transitional year for them, hasn't it? So,
I think they'll definitely challenge for the league next year, but I don't necessarily think they'll win it. If
yeah, I think that's fair.
Arsenal are also doing the same similar thing to what they have been this season with further recruits, I can see them in that 80 to 90 point bracket, and I think we'll start to see the return of like the typical Premier League of like the sort of mid 2010s and sort of late 2000s, if
Yeah.
you know what I mean. In terms of there being multiple teams on like 80 plus points who have smashed the league that year, and then one team on 89, 90, 95 plus points in probably being City again, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, I think we'll see that, and then fourth place you could see. I think again a Newcastle or a Liverpool on probably again maybe 75, 80 points
Probably. Yeah.
if they continue to improve. And then
Yeah.
you'll probably have someone like Villa or Brighton or Brentford. Or like, if Brentford continue this, they might drop off without Ivan Toney. But
Yeah, I don't think Brentford will be. I think they've got the right manager and their infrastructure, and they sign good players, but I don't know if they've got the finances basically to sort of buy enough good players
yeah,
to sustain that kind of challenge.
because they have sold players, but not nearly to the level that Brighton have been able to.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think they're just slightly, just just a kind of slight level below in terms of pulling power and for signings and stuff like that.
Yeah. Did you hear? I think it was David Weir after the last Brighton game had an interview with like Sky Sports, and they were asking him
Mm.
about McAllister and Caicedo leaving and sort of their policy on letting players go. And they were like, yeah,
Yeah,
we understand our place in the food chain. We are a selling club, um, but we just want to do it at the right time so a replacement could be bedded in
yeah,
and
it's really smart,
make a
honestly.
good
Like
figure
they
for them.
just set their price for players, and if a team meets it, then they just take the money,
Yeah, and
because
then
they trust
the
themselves to
ability to
reinvest.
replace. Yeah,
Yeah,
obviously everyone understands that, and so he was pretty open about that. But they are looking to be that kind of team where they can say no and they can keep players within the next season or two,
yeah,
given the league position and European uh, enrollment. I guess
yeah,
enrollment, like going to college.
yeah. I think you've got to you just got to finish Champions League really to bridge that gap, haven't you?
Yeah, I think you have to do it multiple times. I don't think you can do it
Probably. Yeah,
once unless you have a ton of money, and then people are like, yeah, they'll probably do it again,
yeah,
just based on the finances backing the club.
yeah.
Which is why, again, I think Newcastle will have that sustained performance level. I don't think they'll crash and burn,
No.
and I think Eddie Howe will be there, continuing with the Newcastle revolution. Perhaps not one that's morally uh,
No,
most
not really. But no, a
enjoyable.
bit morally dubious, but then the entirety of football's pretty morally dubious anyway. So
Well, I suppose there is that aspect of just everything seems to be about money these days with football.
yeah, and it's not particularly moral that sort of Saudi Arabian clubs that have terrible human rights issues are owning football clubs and blah blah blah. But at the same time, billionaires are pretty morally questionable, regardless where you get your money from and stuff like that. So you know, while you can have an issue with Newcastle specifically, you should probably also have an issue with basically the entire operation. UEFA
I
is corrupt as fuck.
don't
The
know if
Premier
all
League's corrupt.
billionaires are inherently evil, but
I don't think they're evil, but I think nobody needs that much money.
they don't. But it's.
I think it's morally. It's not not
The way the
necessarily.
world's set up today, there's always bound to be good people that are billionaires.
Nah, I don't think it's possible to be a good person and a billionaire.
I think it is. There's not a lot of them because a lot of them have had to be
I think to be a billionaire,
bad.
you need to have exploited people at some point to get there. Like I think you're always going to be stepping on people to get to that position.
I don't know if you necessarily always do, but anyway, let's talk about Premier League football a bit more.
I need to go
Um,
and I need to let the dog out for a piss, but we
okay.
can talk about the squad when I come back because I believe it will be out.
All right. Yeah, I've just looked at it here.
Yeah.
The squad. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, no Buendia.
Yeah, both players still
Um,
to score. He's on the bench though,
I
isn't he?
know. I mean, it will come on, won't he? But
Patterson's on the bench. Revan's on the bench. Carlos. Dendonka Traore.
yeah, nothing that surprising.
Looks like a bit more of a counter-attacking team again.
Yeah, a bit more conservative. It's the same team we played last week, isn't it?
Um,
Who did we play last week? Oh, Tottenham. Yeah,
Tottenham.
yeah, it's the
No, I don't
same
think it's the
thing.
same we played last week, was it?
I think it is. Or
It's the
it's
same we played against Liverpool.
oh against Liverpool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think. Well, it's one of those things. I think it might work. I think we'll win 2-0, but it's just as we were talking about. I don't think it's gonna look good. I think it's gonna look like Brighton probably should have won, and then we won.
Yeah, I'm slightly surprised that we've not gone for a more attacking team because I think at home, this is the kind of team we play against
Well,
teams like Liverpool where we're expecting to have to play on the counter. But I think
it's
I'm slightly
arguably
surprised we're not going for a more
as
control-based team.
it's as attacking, just because of the presence of Dean and of Bailey. You expect that he's looking to play on the counter by playing long balls through to Bailey, because he's not worth having on the pitch if you're going to play short to him.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a counter-attacking team as
Yeah,
opposed to playing Buendia behind Watkins and then McGinn on the right, or even Traore. Bailey's clearly there to exploit some space on the counter-attack. Um, so yeah, maybe a little bit surprised that we're not going from a team which aims to control a game a bit more. But also, I think it's probably wise because realistically, Brighton are just so good at keeping the ball, aren't they?
they are pretty
Um,
good at it.
to outplay them possession wise is pretty tough ask. So maybe it's just realistically a good a good approach to play on the counter. Really.
Yeah, and there's quality enough on the pitch that if they do manage to get the ball and sort of slow it down, they have the technical quality to keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not like it's not flexible. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Brighton have rotated a little bit, but still pretty strong. They kind of seem to be rotation proof as a team, to be honest, don't they?
Yeah, they well, just like they replace sold players, they can replace tired players too. So
Pretty much.
they're
So
they're a force to be reckoned with
no
any
Matoma though.
fixture really. No Matoma.
No,
Mm.
they've rotated their attacking players pretty considerably actually.
Well,
Um,
Ferguson and then Cisse have started most games recently. Buonanotte getting there.
Yeah, Undav and Buonanotte is like
Undav's been fairly
usually
good
they'd have
recently.
Matoma in there.
Yeah. Is he
Um,
injured or is he just on the bench?
no, he's on the bench.
Oh,
They've
okay.
got a few injuries, but like Caicedo, if I think usually they'd play Caicedo in centre mid and push McAllister up and play Matoma instead of Undav and Buonanotte in those positions.
Yeah.
And they've dropped Estupinian as well.
I think De Zerbi's made a good call here because we're going to try and drop in and drop back and play this in a counter-attacking style by the looks of our starting lineup. They need those smaller, more technical players that are going to
Yeah,
be able
maybe
to open us up with
thinking there
some
won't be as much
intricate
space for
passing.
Matoma to run into, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean he is good in tight spaces, but he is more of a pace and power player rather than an intricate sort of
Yeah,
tiki-taka player. which seems to be more like what you would need to break down a low block.
Yep. Oh
Whereas,
no! I've just realised
what have you realised?
I completely forgot to change my fantasy team on the last weekend of the season.
Oh no, I feel
Fuck!
for you. I
I
feel
can't.
for
I
you.
think Fernandez is my captain, which
Yeah,
is all right. Um, shit.
I've
Oh
got
well.
Wilson as my captain. I
Really?
think Chelsea have just been collapsing. All their
Yeah,
players just
Chelsea
want
are.
the
I
season to
can't
be
see them
done.
turning up. They haven't turned up all season. I can't see them randomly showing up today.
Yeah, Wilson's top scorer. They've got to start him on the last day.
Yeah.
I think that's what you've got to say, really. They're going to win 3-1. Me making
Look,
predictions.
uh,
Oh well. We might have to do like an add-on to the end of this episode, maybe on Monday, reacting to what we said.
yeah, I think we should actually. Yeah, yeah, it would probably be quite funny seeing how badly wrong we were.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we should leave the episode there because I think we predicted the season for pretty much most of the Premier League teams. I know we probably missed a couple.
Ugh.
We touched on the
Iheanacho is
relegation
starting,
spots.
mate.
Yeah, I
Iheanacho is
called it.
starting.
I called
Yeah,
it. 2 goals.
surprised. They've maybe Vardy's better off the bench. Maybe he's a bit
Yeah,
past it.
he's going to get an assist off the bench. That's what I reckon. And then let's see who else they started. Da, da,
It's a
da,
good
da,
team. It's a good team. Like it would kind of be a shame if a team that good went down.
Yep, Barnes is starting, so he'll score the other goal. Madison's starting, he'll get 2 assists. It's all coming true, I'm telling you. Everton are going down. Let's see who's starting at Bournemouth. Um, Utara's starting. Lerma,
Well,
Belling,
Callum Wilson is on
Ross,
the bench.
Solanke. Oh, it's looking good.
Callum Wilson's on the bench.
Is he?
Yeah.
How dare they?
Yeah, City have rotated a fair bit. Calvin fucking Phillips is playing. Jesus.
Target's starting.
Really?
Who are Brentford starting with Tony out? Visser and Buemo. I don't think that'll work against City. I'm not gonna lie. I know I said I can see Brighton doing it, but I suppose that is a Brighton with Tony. I don't know if I
Yeah.
can see. Sorry, not Brighton, Brentford. I don't know if I can see this Brentford doing it.
Yeah, it does. But then haven't they got some results, didn't they? Without they beat Tottenham 3-1 and they beat
Yeah,
West Ham
but
2-0, both without Tony, wasn't it?
yeah, but West Ham and Tottenham not the most difficult teams to play at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
When you're
No, I
Brentford,
mean, yeah, it does look quite a lot weaker without Tony in there, but and City's back line, they've rotated so much, but their back line is Laporte, Ake, Walker. Uh, so still pretty fucking tough.
yeah. So they're playing. Are they playing Rodri still?
No,
So
I
it's
actually don't have a
Phillips,
clue what their team is doing.
Phillips Gundogan
Nope, Phil Foden.
in centre mid.
Well, it might be Rico Lewis in centre mid.
Oh yeah, he plays DM.
Yeah,
He'll
so
play the
it'll be
attacking DM alongside Phillips in a more defensive
Rico
role.
Lewis and Calvin Phillips. But that means it's a back three.
Yeah, which turns into a back four when Rico Lewis drops to right back.
So,
Walker goes to centre back.
but where the hell is Foden playing?
He'll be like outright or
Where's but Mahrez is playing though?
okay. Foden's in the middle then, and then who's on the left?
Cole Palmer.
Cole Palmer. Yeah, that's what they played against Chelsea.
Right, yeah. Interesting.
Right, hello there. This is part 2 of the podcast, and previously we did a few predictions, got some wrong, got some right, and now we're just going to reflect on the final day. You know, see what happens. We might get into some football bollocks. We might actually say something insightful. But yeah, Matt, take it away. What did you think of the Leeds game against Spurs? Relegated.
Jesus. Didn't watch it. I
Fair enough.
did watch the highlights. Leeds fucked it. They
Yeah.
conceded in like the second minute, and then they conceded in the second minute of the second half. They had a few chances that they fucked. Obviously, conceded really easy goals. They were just pretty shambolic. I expected them to put up a bit more of a fight, given it's the last day, and They were at home, but they just really were too bad. They're just shocking.
Yeah, they just didn't seem to want it enough.
No, like Leicester and Everton are obviously in the same situation. Seem to want it more. They seem to believe in themselves a bit more, even though they've also had similarly terrible seasons. They just seem to have a bit more faith in themselves.
Yeah. It's a bit
Yeah, Leeds were
bizarre
just.
as well that Leeds was so bad defensively, considering they're under a defensive coach.
I know he just didn't improve them at all, did he, Allardyce?
Yeah, what was it? Three losses and one draw, and
Yeah,
I think they
three.
conceded two, three, and four goals. I
Yeah,
think in
something
those
like
three losses, it's
that. Yeah,
just shambolic.
just no improvement whatsoever.
I think he just came in not giving a single crap about that club. He was just like, I'm coming in, I'm collecting my
Yeah,
500k pay packet,
he did have a bit of a
and
feeling with that, didn't he?
I'm gonna roll around in the media knowing that I'm probably not gonna get another job anyway. I'm gonna roll around in the media saying some ridiculous things, get some attention so that my podcast does
Yeah,
well, and then like just see if I can pull off a miracle with these four games. And if so,
yeah.
everyone's gonna think, oh well, maybe he is a genius. But in reality,
Well, that's the thing with him
yeah,
taking the job in the first place is there wasn't really any pressure. You know, he's got a reputation of saving clubs, but he had 4 games. Nobody's really blaming him for their season, obviously.
yeah,
So, and like you say, he's probably done in management anyway. He's probably not going to want another job, so it literally makes no difference to him. He just got paid loads of money.
yeah, he got paid to basically promote himself. That's
Kind of,
essentially
yeah.
what it was.
I was wondering, when he said about he's as good a manager as Pep Guardiola and this shit.
Yeah,
Um, I was wondering whether he was doing that to get a bit of confidence into the players, so the players are thinking like, all right, he believes in himself, maybe we can too. But it didn't. It's not convincing because they're not idiots. They know who Sam Allardyce is. They know he's not fucking Pep Guardiola.
yeah.
Don't know.
I think
Yeah,
yeah, if coaches are too arrogant as well, it just doesn't reflect well. You know, not mentioning any names, Mr. Jones.
yeah, yeah.
God, he was a
True.
wanker. Sorry, what? No, the only managers I've ever heard of truly being arrogant to a point where it's genuinely extremely dislikable is Nathan Jones, and that was only once he came up to the Prem. To be fair, I don't hear anything about that being the case at Luton.
Mm.
So Nathan Jones, and then Brendan Rodgers as well.
Yeah. I don't. I don't hate Brendan Rodgers like a lot of people seem to. I can see that he's a bit arrogant, but he's got a reputation of being a mega arrogant guy. But I don't know if I see it.
It's where it's he's kind of arrogant in the same way Gerrard was at Villa, where he puts the players down, puts
Mm,
himself on the pedestal, constantly deflects everything onto other people. You know, won't change the
yeah,
system or the style because he wants it his way and he's too arrogant to change it. Too much pride, whatever you want to call it. Uh, and so I think it's there are quotes that I've heard and I think we've discussed before about look at my Gucci belt and stuff like that or whatever. I don't know if it was Gucci, but it was something along those lines. And there are little things like that that add to it, but I think it's mostly in the managerial style and the way he deflects everything onto other people and puts them down to try and lift himself up.
mm,
That's kind of the vibe I get in terms of the arrogance. Because I recently read an article about our season and sort of how Unai Emery's sort of a bit of the underdog for manager of the year if you put
yeah,
context into it, not just result.
yeah.
Um, and they really shone a bit of a light on Gerrard, not just as yes he was a shit manager, but just how arrogant he was and how poor a man manager
Oh
he was in
yeah,
the way that he literally would just tell the players they're not good enough and put all the problems onto people like McGinn, Tyrone Mings publicly.
yeah.
It's like it's just not the way you instill
It was
confidence in
shocking,
people.
wasn't it? It was really
Yeah,
weird. It was like something from the past. It was how managers used to treat players in the 90s. Just blame them for everything, tell them they're not passionate enough, and shit like this.
yeah,
Um, And yeah, the Mings thing was just a massive blunder. Um, yeah, he let players take the heat all the time. Do you remember that Cameron Archer interview?
What? Well, you'll have to remind me.
He somebody. So this is when we're doing really badly and we're struggling for goals. And this is Archer went on loan in January, didn't he? So he's on the bench most of these games, but he's not getting any minutes whatsoever. And journalists are asking him every week, why isn't Cameron Archer getting a shot? Because we're struggling for goals. And then at one point, after being asked for a few weeks in a row about Cameron Archer, he sort of snapped and he said something really weird, like, "Oh, are you friends of his family or something?" Just went kind of snapped at the journalist, claiming that the
Yeah.
journalist was like all cozy with Cameron Archer and was criticizing him too much and stuff. And yeah, stuff like that. Just Gerard just handled man management and the media so badly.
Mm. I
Kind
think
of surprising,
I
isn't
think
it?
he needs a total reset. I think because he went from being under Klopp at Liverpool, coaching their youth sides, sort of. I think at that level, the kind of gravitas you hold as Steven Gerrard might be enough. And then to move on to Rangers, I know he didn't start winning immediately, but eventually start building that winning team that went on to win.
Yeah, fair.
Was it a Europa League, wasn't it? Did they win? No, or did they come runners up?
No,
Final of the Europa League, wasn't it?
that wasn't under Gerard though. That was
Yeah, but he left halfway through that season. Like he built
yeah,
that
yeah.
squad
No, he
that
did
was
all right,
already doing really well.
and he won the
And
title
yeah,
in
I think
the year.
he got very lucky in the sense that he had Mike Beale there to produce the success, and it was probably very fortunate circumstances in the Liverpool youth teams that kind of led to his success there. If he even had any, I'm not going to lie, I've not looked it up how well he actually did,
It's hard
and
to
that
judge,
probably
isn't it?
that led to this kind of ego he held as a
Yeah,
manager
and also him as a
without
player as well. He was
without any
absolutely
substance
adored
to
at
back it up.
Liverpool. He was an amazing player, adored at Liverpool, adored in England, and then yeah, Liverpool youth job where you can't really fail that badly, and then Rangers where he did quite well, sort of. So yeah, he never got kind of humbled
Yeah,
until he went to Villa.
I think he needs to drop down to like League One and build himself up.
I mean, it makes sense. That's where all the best managers come from. Very rarely do managers just go from a playing career straight into successful managerial career.
Unless
Most
they
of the
learn
time,
under Pep.
yeah. I
Seems
mean,
if you learn
Pep
from
went straight
Pep, you
into
can
management, I think.
become a great manager, no matter how much time it was. Like 2 months
Yeah,
under Pep, next thing you know, you're managing a Champions League team.
yeah. I mean, even then though. So, do you mean Arteta when?
No, Arteta had much longer
Yeah, there
under
was
Pep.
company. Did company work under Pep? Or I
I
guess
don't
played under him.
think so. He just played under him. But I know there's been various managers that have had brief spells under Pep at the likes of Barcelona and places like that, or who take a lot of influence from him and achieve
Yeah,
success like that. I think Unai's starting to do it in the Prem in a way that we hadn't seen at Arsenal. The way he sets up Villa, I think he's taking some inspiration from past City systems, and he may even do so more if he brings Konsa into like a inverted right back role where there are sort of a back three in defence, and then in attack it goes to a back two with
yeah,
maybe Konza and Camera, and then you've got the likes of Dougie, maybe Buendia, for example, just coming from the current squad, Moreno in like a Christmas tree sort of shape, then with the sort of two up top as well, and a more attacking midfielder, or
mm,
well, sorry, two up top with your wide players and the three behind them, making up your sort of makeshift midfield.
yeah,
But anyway, yeah, we won't go too deep into that. But I think we've spoken enough about uh, Villa. We always somehow bring it back to Villa because we're this is supposed to be talking about Leeds.
yeah.
What? So who do you think from the Leeds squad would leave now that they're going down?
Woo! Let's have a look, shall we? It's a hard one because they've got one of those squads where they signed loads of players who, on paper, you think, oh, they're probably a good player, but then you don't know whether it was their bad season or whether the players they brought in aren't actually
Yeah,
as good as you expect them to be. So it's hard to kind of judge a lot of their quality.
I
What
think
Nonso will get?
typically, yeah, typically it's either if they showed enough in the Premier League to be sort of seen as someone who is far too good for the Championship, and everyone knows it, then they get that
Yeah,
chance. I think the only player in the lead squad, only two players in the lead squad that you can definitely say that about from last season was Harrison and Rodrigo.
yeah,
I think, and well, maybe Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams were decent too. But the thing is with them, because their midfield is harder to quantify, and McKennie's obviously not staying. Tyler Adams is a recent buy, who, while he's good and while he's obviously got some European pedigree, I think he's a player that could sort of doesn't have too much of an ego on him. He wasn't like a massive output in terms of goal and assist, so I think he could fly under the radar in terms of someone to take out of Leeds potentially, who could spend another year with them in the Championship. Um,
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised
yeah,
if he stayed, but he probably is too good for the championship. But
yeah,
I,
no, it
I,
definitely
I
is.
agree.
Yeah,
I could see him staying. Yeah, Harrison Rodrigo will leave.
we've been
Um,
linked to both of them since they got relegated.
I'd take both of them. Not gonna lie. Um,
I'd take them if it was like Unai Emery's first choice, but if they're like third, fourth backup choices because we couldn't get top targets, then I'm a bit like, age profile's not
yeah,
amazing. They're not standout players. You know,
yeah.
you'd rather if you were going for Premier League relegation candidates, you'd rather a Barnes and Iheanacho, for example, than a Rodrigo Harrison.
You reckon? I think I'd have Rodrigo over Iheanacho, but I'd have Barnes over Harrison.
Oh, I just think that way more because of Iheanacho's got a bit more of a physical presence than Rodrigo, which is something we like up front.
Mm,
He's six
yeah,
one. He's a lot
bit of
younger. I think what is he, 26 maybe? And then
height.
Rodrigo's like 32,
Yeah,
33. I just
yeah.
don't think it's a good move
Is Rodrigo that
financially.
old?
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, he is. Yeah, fair play. I don't want him anymore.
Yeah, Harrison's obviously a decent age and profile, but I think he's at his ceiling. Like I think he reached his ceiling maybe like a
Yeah,
season ago,
yeah.
and he's just gonna stay at that level now. Whereas
Yeah, I remember
Barnes, I
us
can
being linked
see
with him at the end of January for like not a
25 or
lot of
something.
money. And I think if you get him for a fairly cheap deal as a good squad option, he'll get a few goals off the bench, then he's fine. But yeah, if he's going to be the first choice, then that's a bit concerning, probably.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's concerning. Like if you put him in a good system, in a role that he suits, I think you get good output. But I wouldn't want to bring him in to take minutes away from Ramsey, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
Like if Barnes comes in and takes minutes from Ramsey, they're completely different players. Barnes hasn't hit his potential, and I could see a world where I'm happy with them rotating and getting minutes both ways.
yeah,
Whereas I would be completely different in that opinion, obviously with Harrison.
yeah, yeah. I'm looking at it. What about Brendan Aronson?
Brennan, I think he'll stay. He wasn't good enough to
Yeah, I
earn a
agree.
move. I don't think he'll be on high wages. Obviously, he'll be on decent wages. It's Premier League, and they probably have relegation clauses. Um, but yeah, you're generally looking at the players with the highest wages as well that are going to leave. So you might see someone like Jorginho Rutter move just because he came in for so much money. I think it was 30 mil plus, and he was seen as a good talent. So he might have signed for a fair wad of cash. The only thing there is obviously it was only a January signing, so whether or not he will see he moved to Leeds because he saw a long term future there, where
Mm.
he might stay for them, might be enough to make him stay 1 year in the
Well, he's
Championship
very young,
potentially.
isn't he?
Yeah, he's
He's
21.
not really at a critical point in his career. He might think that if he can have a really good season in the championship, it might do him good confidence wise and stuff, and he might learn something. Like he's not at an age where he needs to move somewhere better necessarily.
Yeah, I just think with him, he spent most, if not all, of his career at top division sides, and when
Yeah,
you're a
true.
player like that, you tend not to take kindly to playing in a second division when you've already been playing in top divisions for pretty much your entire career at that young
Yeah.
age. So I think overall, I think he'll leave, but it would have to be a cut price fee, which I don't think Leeds will like. So he
Yeah.
could get priced out of it, but if it's down to him and clubs wanting him, I think there's a way out for him.
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, it depends how much they're willing to let him go for, whether he's got a clause or whatever in his contract.
Yeah,
I don't really know anything about any of their defenders.
yeah. You've got Is it Struvic? Streak?
Streak. I don't know. Streak.
Um, I don't think he'll get a move. Koch could get a move potentially. He could go back to Germany. I feel like I think he's quite well respected over there. Um, Rocker will probably get a move. His qualities just on the ball is probably just a little bit too much to stay. If you know what I mean.
Mm,
Like I know he's probably not as valuable a player as Tyler Adams. You know, probably doesn't work as hard, etc., etc. But I just think possession teams in the Premier League or even in Spain will just look at the technical quality he has and the ability to maintain possession, things like that, and just go, yeah, he's not going to revolutionise us, but he's going to be a cheap option that can definitely play a role in the squad.
yeah.
Like an Arsenal could potentially. I don't think they will because they've got far better resources to go after, much better options. But if they completely ran out or spent loads of money elsewhere, I could see them adding him to the squad as someone who's good on the ball and could fill that Xhaka role. Um,
Interesting shout.
yeah,
Yeah, but
who else is
he's one
there?
of those players who's like players who like that who are technically good are kind of more valuable, and they tend to work in better squads. You know.
Yeah, because if you've got that technical ability, it just takes finding the right role for them and giving them the
Yeah, exactly.
confidence
Yeah,
to use it.
yeah,
Really, even
yeah.
if because someone might be not technically gifted but be an incredible player at the same time, like Haaland. If they lose that confidence and they have a massive down year, it can take a lot to get them back to that place because they haven't got that inherent technical
Mm,
quality. Obviously, he has his physical qualities, which can work in a similar kind of way, but it's not quite as easy to leverage into good output, good performances.
yeah. Um,
Ian
yeah.
Bellier, what about him?
Don't know. It's tricky because he's had kind of a bad season basically, hasn't he?
I still think he's very young. They've had him since they were in the championship. I'm pretty sure,
Yeah,
so I'm pretty
yeah,
sure he'll stay. I'd
yeah.
like, and I don't think his expected goals against was particularly good this season. So I don't see anyone
No, well, that's what I
really
mean. Is
taking
that
a punt on him.
probably last year, people were in for him, and you would have said last year if Leeds got relegated, then Melier would definitely have got a move, but he's just not has had as good a season. And
Yeah,
like yeah, like you say, he's young, so I could just see him staying.
I could potentially see Spurs taking a punt on him because he's like a young French
Hmm.
goalkeeper.
Yeah, that's
But
not actually.
I don't think whoever comes in would be happy with that. I think that would be a club signing because he's young and they'd see him as like a Lurie um, kind of heir, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah,
Rather than a good manager coming in and saying, I want Ian Melier, he's a good young keeper who's going to stick with us 3 years. Because I don't think there's enough evidence there yet to say
no,
he's going to be a great keeper. But he's
no.
definitely, for his age, he's a good profile overall. I just don't know if he's good enough for a top club who's looking to compete in Europe to take a risk on him.
Oh yeah, no. I think yeah, it would be a major risk if Spurs suddenly made him their first choice goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely a step too far for him at the moment.
So looking at Leicester, pretty much their entire squad's leaving anyway. Who do they keep?
Probably their goalkeepers.
Yeah, they'll stay. They're lucky to
Um,
play for Leicester in the Premier League, so they'll stay.
yeah,
Um,
Shit, it's so hard. Honestly, they're like their
Madison's
whole
obviously going. Tielemans has already said
Dewsbury
he's going.
Hall might stay.
Dewsbury Hall, I reckon, would stay. Yeah, Luke Thomas will probably stay. I think Justin James will probably go just because. Well, actually, how long was he injured for this season? Because if he was injured for a good few months, then that probably puts people off going in for him.
Yeah,
But I
he
know
seems to
he's well
be
rated.
injured all the time. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I think
he's a
he
good performer.
yeah he's a good player, but I think uh, I don't know if anybody will go for him because he seems to have been injured for the last 2 years on and off.
I think Pereira and Ndidi are already on planes to Syria. Honestly, they're gonna go live out the rest of their careers at maybe Ndidi will go to like AC Milan and Pereira
Pereira,
probably like
yeah,
Napoli or Napoli. Don't know Napoli or Napoli, Napoli or Lazio. Sorry, I meant um, someone like that.
yeah.
Who
What
else
about
would go?
Mendy?
I think I could see him staying.
Yeah,
I think he's at least
don't know if he's
upper
been
championship
impressive enough
quality.
for somebody to.
I other than age profile, I'm pretty sure he's a little younger.
He's
I'd
30.
liken him. Oh, is he?
Yeah,
Oh God, I did not think he was 30.
yeah, maybe
Um,
not.
yeah, I'd put him in a very similar bracket to Nakamba. Like, has put in positive performances, but in a very limited role on very odd occasions.
Yeah,
Probably would do a good job at the top of the championship, like Nakamba's done. So I think he
yeah, yeah,
stays.
yeah,
Like him and Dewsbury Hall as a midfield too. If you're playing 4-4-2 in the championship,
yeah. I mean,
would do pretty well.
that's better than most championship midfield, probably.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Iheanacho's probably gone.
Yep. Daka.
If he got move out of England, maybe, but he hasn't done
Yeah.
enough for another English team. I think
No,
to go
that's
for him.
yeah. He's probably too good for the championship, but it would be quite a risky move for someone in the Prem
I
to buy him unless he was someone like
I wouldn't say he's
Bourne.
too good for the championship. He's never shown anything that says to me he's too good for the championship. I think he
Um,
might get like depends how well the team he plays in is like how well the team he's playing in is playing. If he was in that Middlesbrough team instead of Cameron Archer, for example, I think he might have got like 10 goal involvements over that half of the season. If he was in, say, that Coventry side over Gyökeres, whatever his name is,
mm,
he would have got like 5 over half a season.
yeah,
He's a very one-dimensional player. He's all about the pace and the finish. And if he's not in a system and a league that can allow for that, I just think he's just there's just nothing else. He's just falling on
fair. Yeah,
nothing.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah, he was poor in the Premier League, but
I think Bundesliga or Championship is he's like one of those players that doesn't have the technical and physical qualities to play in most top divisions, but because of the style of football that's played in the Bundesliga, he could get away with it there.
yeah, or league. He could go to Liga, and I feel like he's somewhere in between Championship level and Premier League level. Like I think because when he played in Austria, he scored a fuckload of goals. Uh, so I can see him in like an Austrian league, Eredivisie, and or maybe lower Bundesliga
I don't think
league.
he'll get a move to any sort of any European league outside of the top 6 or 7. And when I'm saying that, that's basically saying those last two that aren't the top 5. You're probably looking at the Netherlands, Belgium, or Portugal. Even when I'm talking about then, I'm talking about like PSV, Ajax, Sporting, Porto. Not he wouldn't even
Yeah,
get a move to Benfica. They wouldn't take him.
no, I don't think he's good enough for those clubs.
I could maybe go to, but the thing is as well the price, because I don't know how much they
Yeah,
paid for him, but it wasn't cheap. I'm pretty sure.
I
I think it was
don't know.
probably 20 plus.
probably.
So yeah, Daka, I would back them to keep him in the championship unless he's on silly wages. Then he's off. I think Samare's probably off.
Yeah,
I think his contract might be out soon anyway.
a lot of their squad is out of contract, aren't they?
Yeah, I've didn't. I should have had a little look, but I haven't got my third monitor at the moment because of uh, I use the HDMI cable to watch the football in the lounge on the final day.
No.
So yeah, I haven't got the HDMI plug in, so I can't look at stats at the same time as doing all this. But yeah, well, so who's out of contract for Leicester? Have you got a list?
Let me find it.
On the subject of out of contract, did you see Asensio's picked PSG?
Apparently so, yeah.
Uh, we didn't believe it, really, did we?
No, I mean, if that had happened, I would have been like slapping myself in the face because, yeah, it obviously always seemed pretty unlikely that was going to
Yeah.
happen. So Leicester, Tielemans, who's would have left anyway. Tete,
He was on loan, so
yeah, it was option to buy, so yeah, he'll just go back. Amati,
he'll.
um,
Do you think they'll re-sign him?
hmm,
I think they
I don't
probably would.
know. I don't know how good he's been.
With the state of their finances, I think they'll re-sign him instead of trying to find someone else.
Yeah, and I feel like he's not been that dreadful that they're desperate to get rid of him. Probably it's like he's probably a pretty safe signing. Soyuncu, who's already signed with Atletico Madrid, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's already signed away. Who else is left?
Chowdhury, forgot about him.
I think.
Has he been on loan somewhere?
Yeah, I think wasn't it Watford?
Oh right, yeah. So they might. I don't know how good he's been. If he's been all right at Watford, they might keep him about or not. Mendy's out of contract,
Oh,
and Johnny Evans and Bertrand. So not that many actually.
hmm. Yeah.
Um,
It's a mess for Leicester, isn't it? It's such a mess.
yeah,
Suppose they get decent money for three players, maybe at least, and that
yeah. I mean,
allows them
they're
some
going to have
level
to
of
get rid of
squad
a lot of the
rebuilding.
players just based on their wages, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're going to have to clear out loads and loads of players, and they will get good money for a lot of them because a lot of those players are quite desirable.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Barnes' goal against West Ham, when I
Yeah,
watched that goal, I did not think I was watching Leicester. I was like, I'm watching Arsenal right now. That's
yeah.
Martinelli running through on goal.
Same goal he scored against us. Remember?
Yeah, pretty similar, yeah. Um, oh, he's such a good winger.
He's good. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You look at their team: Barnes, Iheanacho, Tielemans, Madison, even Castagna, Sumare, Dewsbury Hall.
Well, not Samare. I wouldn't.
I mean,
He's not had a good game since he arrived at Leicester, as far
is he
as
not?
I'm aware.
I thought he'd been
Well,
okay.
I mean, maybe objectively, he might have had a couple of games where he was decent, technically, but like in my memory as a sort of vaguely interested person in Leicester, like he's not had a good game since he got there, as far as I
Fair.
can remember. But
Um, but yeah, no, they have loads of good players. They need to get rid of loads of players because their wages. They'll have they'll have money to reinvest, but it's just like such a big job. It is a bit
yeah,
of a
they're gonna have to play it smart. They're gonna have to do like a Southampton. You're talking about like City youth players and maybe some top performers from like League One. Maybe they'll go get that Charlton striker that we were looking at. I can't remember his name. The 6'5", 19
Oh
year old.
right, yeah, yeah, I
Maybe they'll
remember
get
this.
someone like him. Maybe they'll take Finn Azaz, Philogene Badace. Maybe we loan them Ramsey, something like that.
Yeah,
Um, Aaron Ramsey, not Jacob Ramsey. Yeah, can you imagine us loaning Jacob Ramsey to Leicester in the Championship? He would absolutely tear it up.
yeah.
Oh God, I feel sorry for the Championship defences.
Um, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, their recruitment was always kind of decent, wasn't it?
yeah, it was decent up until all of a sudden it like a whole season of transfers just flopped, and then the
Yeah,
year after, a bunch of people dropped off, and then this year it's just completely collapsed.
yeah, it was kind of a combination of factors, like their whole downfall, wasn't it? But generally, you wouldn't say that their transfers have been the main problem, really.
Yeah, because Ndidi was great, Tielemans was great, Madison was great, Iheanacho was decent. Barnes, did he buy Barnes or was he their youth
Yeah,
product?
yeah, he played for West Brom before Leicester.
Did he?
Um, he might have been on loan. Yeah, he went to several clubs on loan, but he was always at Leicester.
Oh, okay, all right. Um, who else is there that was a decent buy? I mean,
Castagna.
Soyuncu was a decent buy at the time they brought him in.
Yeah,
So
Pereira
was
was quite a good buy,
Castagna. So
really.
was Pereira. Yeah, but then Tate this season and Christensen at fullback this season, they were good buys.
Yeah,
Harry Suter was a risky buy. He would work in the championship though.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, I don't think their transfers was a problem. Even this year when they've
well,
had a few flops. Um,
they were and they weren't because some on paper were great signings that just completely flopped, like Samare, like Mendy,
yeah,
Perez. I can't remember. I think he was a flop anyway, so he wasn't a good signing.
yeah,
Iheanacho was all right, but tailed off. Daka was a complete flop, and Wout Faes has been a huge flop.
yeah.
Goalkeepers have been a flop, flippity flop.
I mean, that
like,
was talk about their transfers have been generally okay, but getting rid of Schmeichel or letting Schmeichel leave and not replacing him was catastrophically terrible decision.
flippity flop. That's what it was.
Like it kind of outweighs all their decent signings, and then you add in some of their kind of flops that were kind of minor, but then fucking Schmeichel and not replacing him is like kind of
Yeah, club captain won the Premier League with you.
just makes no sense.
Just I don't.
It
Did
wasn't
he
like he
want
was.
to leave? Like,
I think he must. There must have been. Well, if he did want to leave, fair enough, because he'd been there, his whole career. So he probably, he wanted something new. He maybe saw that it was getting a bit stale with Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers is also a kind of manager who falls out with people, so it's not
yeah,
impossible that he fell out with him. Uh, so if he wants to leave, fine, but fucking replace him, man. Such an important player.
yeah. Like I don't know what experience Danny Ward had or Daniel. Is it Daniel Iverson?
Yeah,
I don't know what experience they had before the Premier League, but just the
Danny
fact that
Ward had that Wales World Cup where he did all right, and that was basically it.
yeah, it's just not great, is it? It's not convincing.
No, not no no nowhere near enough to suddenly stick him in as your first choice goalkeeper.
Yeah, and so Leicester, all in all, I think are fucked. But yeah, so at Southampton, I think they'll do great in the Championship. I think they'll retain most of their squad, bar maybe. Oh God, what's this guy's name? How do you pronounce it? The huge striker they brought in,
Oh, Paul
Paul
Oniachu.
something like.
Oniachu.
Yeah, the
Sorry.
huge man they brought in. They
Yeah.
didn't use him at all correctly, which
Onuachu. Yeah.
yeah, is a bit strange for Southampton. They usually have a bit more of a plan. Sulemana looks great, at least in a more open game where they.
Yeah. Sulemana looks good.
And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I was talking about him for Villa before Southampton signed him.
Yeah. Well, it's still too early to be claiming Sulemana as some sort of.
Oh no, he's gonna be great. You'll see. If
Well, he
they keep
scored. Did
him,
you see the goal he scored
yeah.
against Liverpool? Fucking good goal.
If
Yeah,
they
he's obviously,
keep him in
obviously
the
a good player.
championship, he's gonna get. I think he'll get 25 plus goals and assists if he doesn't get injured in the championship season.
Big call, mate. We'll have to follow up on that next year.
Yeah. Like we followed up on the video from
Yeah.
Sunday where we can't even remember what we predicted.
Yeah.
All I know is I got the Leicester result right, the Villa result right. I can't remember what I predicted for Leeds. I got the Everton one
Um,
wrong, saying Bournemouth would win.
yeah.
I got the
Yeah. I got the
Brentford one
Villa,
right.
Villa right, Leicester right. That was probably it. Everton. I think that I can't even remember thinking about the Arsenal game. Like, I think we only talked about the games that were consequential.
Yeah, there's no point predicting just random final day games
Yeah.
because we always take too long over each subject anyway. So there was no point trying to cover the entire Premier League. Um,
True.
but we like to discuss things in depth and get
Yeah,
distracted.
man. Going too deep, it's good. You got to
Yeah.
ramble. It's where all the interesting thoughts come from.
Yeah, like if we just go through and treat this like a show, like on Sky News or something, where it has to be,
Yeah, yeah, no.
like clip after clip after clip, all super entertaining and super direct,
No.
completing a segment, then it doesn't. You don't enjoy it, do you? It's not a conversation.
No.
It's not a chat.
I would,
It's not
it'd
a
feel like a job.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
What do we think
Fucking
about Brighton? Who do you think?
they're shit.
Absolutely terrible
Overrated.
football club, terribly run, get out the league, dog shit, bad
Lucky.
example to
It was all
everyone,
luck.
all luck. Fucking
Robert De Zerbi has shit hair.
Caicedo is the next Ndidi. Get him out. Right, no, but in all seriousness, no, not that serious. Just more serious than that.
In a bit of seriousness.
In some level of seriousness on the Football Bollocks podcast, if that's what we are changing to. Uh, who do you think they sign? I know they're in for Dahoud on a free transfer to replace
Yeah, I saw
McAllister,
that. Yeah.
but who do they replace Caicedo with? The thing is, we can say this and we'll probably be like, oh, 20,
Nick
30
Campbell.
million pound player from Bundesliga or whatever, but in reality, they're probably going to find some like 10 million pound player from
Yeah.
Honduras or something
Yeah,
who's
that's
just
what I was
gonna
going to say. I feel like whoever they buy to replace him, I will not have heard of, and he will be amazing.
yeah.
Um,
It's the only thing. Well, they did splash the cash on Estupinian, João Pedro, so maybe they are sort of stepping up a bracket instead of the like the 5 to 15 million pound bracket where they know they can make huge profit. They're now going for that sort of 15 to 30 million pound bracket where they can get instant output to
yeah,
push the team further, but also push their build that player up in development to the point where their value is then greatly increased using the
yeah,
same kind of statistical models, but just a tier up, if you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah, possibly. Because I mean, Dahoud is kind of that. Obviously, he's free, so it's a bit different. But he's a player with a bit more of a reputation than the players they usually sign. He's a player that people know about that other teams would probably be in for. But now, I suppose, with them finishing sixth, um, they've kind of got the position in the league, the European competition, um, to attract another tier of player. You know, before this season, really, they were making really good signings, but they'd finished 11th. You know, they're not historically a big club, and so it's hard for them to attract a a high tier player. But now
Yeah,
Europa League, bit more money from that, and a more interesting prospect for a lot of players. So it's probably natural that they go for another caliber player just because they can actually attract them.
yeah, no, absolutely, and they've been very honest about their stance on letting players go and the fact that they're not a big club. Very open and honest about it. Like, have you seen the interviews that De Zerbi and their sort of chairman have done?
Yeah, just saying like these players are gonna leave. We can't hold on to them.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, but they always get a fair price for their players as well, don't they? Like they know they're very firm.
I will say I think McAllister's a bit overrated, to be honest. Like, I think Dahoud will come in and be better than him, and people will be like, "Oh wow,
Yeah,
McAllister wasn't actually all that. He was just in this great Brighton team. Obviously, he's technically pretty decent,
yeah, he's
but
technically a good player.
he's not.
Um,
I think that's kind of what they get out of this as well. Is because they have such a great system, they can make average or just above average players look amazing, like Cucurella, for example, and
Mm.
get that huge fee and not be too fussed because they know they can bring in someone
Yeah,
better.
well, McAllister
As
is
long as
very
they fit the
replaceable,
system.
isn't he?
Yeah,
He's not a player who you look at and you think like they're going to be screwed if they lose him.
yeah,
There's plenty of players out there who they can go out and buy and replace him. Especially if he goes to Liverpool, he's going to be going for loads of money. There's hundreds of players they can get who, while he's a good player, like you say, he just fits into the system. I kind of agree. He's a tidy player, but I'm not like super excited by him. I don't think he's,
yeah.
you
With
know,
him going to Liverpool, I'm not comparing him to Naby Keita, but I think barring if you try and ignore the injuries, I think they'll come in at a similar level where it's like, oh, this guy's going to revolutionise the midfield. He'll underwhelm based on what people thought he would do, and then people will kind of sort of underrate him a bit, think that he's shit, and then as long as he doesn't get injured every bloody season like Naby Keita did, I think he'll then actually start to fit into that team nicely in after a
mm,
season or two, and play that kind of Wijnaldum, Naby Keita role, where it's like get a few goals from midfield, don't do anything of particular note from a defensive standpoint or maybe even progressive standpoint, um, and just be someone who holds onto the ball, moves it well, creates options for other players, and as I say, occasionally gets a goal or two.
yeah.
Like I
I
think
mean,
that's
that's kind of
kind of
what he
what he,
is. I think.
yeah, it's kind of what he does at Brighton anyway. Like
I
it's
think
yeah,
people with Argentina, he played quite a bit further forward than he does at Brighton. Um, and that's where he kind of took off really, is people saw him playing for Argentina and he was doing really well.
yeah.
Um, but then at Brighton, week in week out, he's not really that impressive but it's partly because he plays a bit of a deeper role, and but then he's not the kind of player who's going to go into Liverpool at attacking mid and massively improve them, because he's not an attacking mid really. He's more of a number eight,
He's a
and
goal
like
scoring number eight,
that's
really. Yeah.
kind of what he does. Is
And
just
even
play
then,
that
as a goal
big
scoring
role.
number eight, what was it? 90% of his goals were penalties or something
Yeah, yeah,
this season.
yeah, yeah,
So I can understand why Liverpool would go for him, but if they sign him for anything more than 40 or 50 million, it's just, which they probably will. It'll probably be like 60, 70. I just see it as a bit of a waste of money. There's other players out there who can fill that role and offer much more that aren't going to cost you anywhere near as much.
yeah.
Even someone.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he's a good player, but I think yeah, if Liverpool spend like 60, 70 million on him, then they're overpaying. He's a good player. He's worth 40 million pound, I think, to Liverpool or whoever. But yeah,
well, yeah, that's the same thing with all of these. It's what it's worth to the buying team and the
yeah,
selling team.
yeah,
Brighton will always drive a hard bargain in terms of making sure they get the fee they want for a player, and Liverpool are desperate for midfielders. So I
yeah,
suppose on the one hand, yeah, he's not really worth that in a in an open market where there's multiple suitors for him and Brighton are willing to sell, which they are. When it just seems to be one team after him, and that team are desperate for players in
yeah,
his position. You know they've got money, and you know you can ask for a high price. It kind of makes some of those ideas of his price just a bit irrelevant, to be honest.
yeah. What about James Milner? They've signed him, haven't they?
What, Brighton?
Yeah.
Is it confirmed?
Let me check. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Oh no, hang on, maybe not.
Well, I mean, hypothetically, if he is going there, I think he becomes their new Pascal Gross, sort
Yeah,
of
it's just
Adam
a utility
Lallana type.
player, isn't it?
Yeah, he's
Well,
gonna.
well, I mean, it's interesting to talk about, I think, because it's suggesting a bit of a different approach from them. You know, possibly the fact they've got European competition, more games. They just need depth.
Leadership as
They're
well.
going for depth player, versatile, Premier League experience, like all things that
Yeah,
you know.
I think as well what he adds on the training pitch and in
Yeah,
the dressing room will, well, maybe not the dressing room because he's pretty boring, but maybe more on the training pitch side of things, because how fit he is and how much effort he puts in, how
yeah,
much of a good professional he is, will, because any players they buy from a youth kind of level, they're going to have done their homework on them. They're going to be technically gifted. They're
mm,
going to be a useful player in whatever role they have planned for them. It's just making sure they have that mental side. And as
yeah,
Milner's such a good utility player, can play in fullback, central midfield, probably on the wing to some level. Like, he's going to be a great example and great sort of mentor for a lot of those young players coming in. Someone to look up to. It's like, this is how we train. This is how we behave.
yeah. It's that next level thing, isn't it? They're bringing in a player who's been there and done it, won the Premier League, won this and that, knows how to perform at a high level, knows how to train at a high level.
Yeah,
So yeah, if they wanted to, it's kind of leading by example. If they want to take,
it's kind of how like we brought Young back,
yeah,
who's leaving, which is sad.
I don't
But
know, what is that about?
well, he's either going to retire or go into coaching. I can't see him dropping. Or he, you know what? One of the promoted teams might sign him.
Maybe,
Like, he might go to Luton. To be fair, you never know.
maybe. It's just at the end of the Brighton game, he said he wants to stay.
Yeah.
Like there's a quote that says
And then
it's up
Unai
to
said
the manager.
on Monday we'll talk about it.
Yeah,
And then
and
what
then
was it? Tuesday he
he
was.
said probably yeah.
Yeah, it was. Was it Tuesday? Yeah, it was Tuesday.
Yeah,
Um,
this is what's interesting is because it must have been a fairly easy conversation. I'm thinking maybe Young still wants to play regularly. Maybe Unai said to him, "You're gonna get your minutes are gonna be very sporadic. You're gonna be you know purely a squad player." And maybe Young has gone. I still want to play one more year of regular football, and then at that point it's pretty cut and dry.
yeah.
Um,
So I think as well he would have had the opinion of me leaving, because I want to play every week, is not only good for me, it's good for the club, because while he's been a good performer this year, he is 38, and we do need to open up minutes for younger players like Kessler Hayden. If we are bringing in a rotation right
yeah,
back for that player who will probably be younger, because I don't see Emery signing another 30-year-old fullback,
no,
and then possibly younger players like Kessler Hayden wanting rotation minutes possibly in the Conference League. It's a good move for both the club and for him.
yeah, very interesting though. Interesting. I'm interested to what Emery's plan is.
I prefer to see him do a bit of an Arteta and stay there under Emery, learning to coach
Yeah,
and
that'd be
like
cool.
getting into that dressing room. Because when you have an elite coach there, like we've seen with Guardiola at the many clubs he's been at, having people to absorb that information and be around him and learn from him can really work. Like, it's a
Yeah,
sort of an underrated aspect of what you get from having an elite coach. It's not just the coaching to the players and how they handle the media and how they decide how the team should play, the tactics, and the recruitment. It's also the staff around them learn better ways of doing things, better ways of sort of communicating to people how they want them to play, how they want them to be, what they want them to do on the pitch, man management, all of those different things that come with being an elite manager, like Unai Emery is, can be passed down, like we've seen with someone like Pep, to even Company, who never actually coached under him,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
to Arteta. I know there's more that people might be screaming if they're even watching this, but yeah, it's just a completely underrated aspect that I'd love to see Young get something out of, and I'd be disappointed to see him sign for someone else as a
yeah.
player
It'd
unless
just be a
he
bit of a shame.
said something along the lines of I do plan to come back to Villa for coaching
Maybe,
or
yeah,
something like that. Maybe he's
yeah,
already been working towards his coaching badges while he's been a player. Who knows? Like some players do that. I could see him
Yeah,
being a great fit as a youth coach, like starting off at Villa and then
yeah,
building his
and he,
way
he
up.
always seemed like a good captain. He seemed kind of like a smart guy, like he had a good football brain kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, his mentality is great. The way
yeah, he
he
seems
treats
like
players
the kind of
around him is
guy who
great.
would be a good coach. So
Yeah, he's got good charisma. I think the fact that he's 38 and gets on so well with players, like when he did that interview with Caden Young, you could see how
yeah,
well he gets on with all ages of people. Uh, just a solid all-round guy to have in your club, have in the squad, have as a coach, whatever it is.
yeah,
Even just having him travelling with the squad on match days, just having him around, his kind of charisma and his aura in a way. Not that he's like Ronaldo or anything, but just having that same feeling as we had this season. Because I imagine he contributed a lot to that dressing room and training, things like that.
definitely. Yeah, I can't find anything about him doing his coaching badges or anything. So
Yeah, we'll have to see what comes of that.
yeah,
Right, let's try and take it back away from Villa again.
damn it.
uh,
What do you want to talk about, man?
well, we've spoken about Brighton. I think
Do you
we should.
think Brighton had a better season than Villa if you discount? Because everyone talks about Brighton as like the standout team of the season, which they probably were, considering they didn't sign any like massive names, etc. But I think Unai has done a better job than De Zerbi.
Unai did a better job than Zerbi for sure,
I suppose
but
you can't really say Villa's overall season is better because we had a terrible first 13 games or something.
yeah,
But
and also the games we have won, we haven't always looked like we necessarily deserve to win.
yeah, I mean that's the
Like
difference with Brighton,
we've deserved
the underlying
quite a
numbers and stuff.
few. I'd say a good proportion of the games we've won, we should have won, but not all of them. Some of them you'd
Yeah,
expect to draw, maybe even a loss. Um, just came down to a lack of finishing in some on some occasions.
yeah,
And so when you watch Brighton demolish teams, especially like an Arsenal, and go toe to toe with City and demolish other sides, you go well. And
yeah.
that goal
That's the difference
difference,
with
it's
Brighton
like
is that they,
consistent. Yeah,
yeah,
consistent dominance over the league season, over
yeah,
most
they
of the
scored
games they
so many
played.
goals. Yeah, they would go toe to toe with teams, whereas teams like Villa we'd sit back against Liverpool, Arsenal, City, and Brighton would try and outplay them and sometimes succeed at keeping possession
Mm.
and stuff.
Well, I
But
think we tried to go toe to toe with Arsenal, and obviously we're far less advanced in our development under the new Emery regime. Obviously, De Zerbi hasn't been there as long, but he took over something that was already pretty well polished,
yeah,
and so he has put his influence on the team. They've become a much more fluid attacking unit since he got there, but their general structure and the structure of the club was already in place for him to succeed. Whereas Unai's completely transformed Villa. So yeah, he's had a better season than De Zerbi, but Villa haven't had as good a season and don't look as good a team yet as Brighton
yeah,
do. Um,
yeah,
I suppose if you're looking at where we came from last season rather than just overall this season, you'd say Villa have had a contextually better season because we've gone from 14th to 7th, where they've gone 11th to 6th. But yeah, all in all, I think Brighton do play better football and had a better season.
yeah. I think they, like you say, yeah, they look like a better team in terms of the team. Brighton have had probably a better season, but um, I think Emery will be overlooked for manager of the season by. I mean,
Well,
you
Pep's
can't
already
really
won
argue.
it, but
Yeah, well, you can't. Yeah, has he
yeah,
Premier League manager of the season? No,
literally,
fair.
yeah,
Yeah, well, you can't really argue with Pep because they've had an immense season.
yeah.
But I think I would put Emery and Eddie Howe over De Zerbi, possibly.
Eddie Howe. There's this weird thing with Eddie Howe where it's like, yeah, he's done a great job, but it's just kind of tainted by the money, isn't it? It's
A
like
little bit, yeah, a little bit. But then they've not been spending like PSG or something. If you look at their squad,
it's.
he's got a really really good season out
I
of
don't
their
know
squad.
how much have they spent since he came in.
It's not been insane. It's been fairly gradual. They have had, they've spent a decent amount of money
Well,
each
he's
season,
only
but
been there a season and a half, hasn't he?
yeah,
So like since Eddie Howe.
so the takeover was 2022.
Yeah, so that January so from January, summer, January again, those three transfer windows since the takeover happened, they've spent 250 mil,
Yeah,
which is essentially one season of transfers, really, because that first January, I think they just signed Guimaraes, didn't they?
yeah,
I think
yeah. So I
one
mean,
moved
yeah,
in
they
in the
have spent
summer.
a lot. Yeah, they've spent a lot, but they they didn't have. I mean, they had an okay squad, but
I don't know if it was okay. It was not doing well when they took over.
well, no, it wasn't doing well. But
Well,
oh,
I
when
suppose,
when they took over, I suppose, yeah,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
because they did have what's Rafa Benitez with
Hmm.
this squad, pretty much. Not the new players, obviously, but before Eddie Howe took over, I think obviously there wasn't he wasn't him out and then Eddie Howe
Well,
in, was it? There was a gap
no, it was Steve
between
Bruce.
where Steve Bruce was there, but
Yeah,
the team that Steve Bruce was doing terribly with, Rafa Benitez also had, and he
yeah,
wasn't doing great with it either. So
no.
while it was probably enough to survive, maybe
Yeah, it
it's
was like a lower league, probably just about surviving level of squad.
yeah.
And this is what I mean. In the spending's not been crazy because they have spent loads of money, but they've overhauled the whole squad, and they've only very recently started buying players of a significantly better caliber with like Trippier and Isak. That's only in the last couple of windows where they've started kind of really buying more luxury players, whereas the windows before that was just getting a solid kind of base with like signings like Target.
Yeah,
Um,
I would have liked to have seen to say Eddie Howe has had a good a season as Unai or as De Zerbi. I would have liked to have seen him take over the Newcastle squad at the start of this season with no signings, maybe like one of a low level in January, kind of the same way Brighton and Villa have had,
mm,
and see what they did with that squad. Then, if he then reached even ninth, I'd probably say he had a better season than Villa have, finishing seventh, because that squad is even worse than Villa's
yeah, yeah,
at the start of
probably.
this season. So it's hard to say. I'd say he's done a better job than De Zerbi, but not as good as Unai. Purely based on the money and the starting position of Newcastle.
Yeah,
Because De Zerbi again, it's not tainted by, but it's in context. It is like, well, it's kind of like, did you win the race if the three guys before you in the relay put you 20 yards ahead of the rest? Mm,
yeah,
like, yeah, you won the race, but you had a lot of help
yeah,
before that. So
yeah. I think contextually, I agree. Yeah, I'd put Emery above those two. To be fair, I mean Newcastle only won one more game than Villa, and Brighton finished 1 point above Villa. Which considering where the two clubs were at the point that Emery took over, um, Emery quite clearly has done a better job there. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, I think when you look at the points differences from last season to this season, how many more they got, I think we're up there with the likes of Arsenal, Newcastle,
Yeah,
Brighton, Brentford. That's
yeah,
like,
man.
I
Brentford had
think
a really good season.
Thomas Frank, while his year this year might not necessarily have been as good as people we've just mentioned, I think he's a better manager than De Zerbi and Eddie Howe. I think put him
Yeah,
at those clubs, maybe them. I don't know, because of Eddie Howe's style, that club seems to have sort of jumped up a little too quick, kind of like Unai's done. But
Mm.
I think long term he's a better manager probably than both of those. But
I'd
there's
probably
time
say
to prove that wrong.
better than Howe, because Howe has had an amazing season with Newcastle this year, but then his jobs before that, he did a brilliant job at Bournemouth, but he never took Bournemouth to an especially high level. Um, so aside from this season with Newcastle, how this is Howe's first season at that kind of high level. So yeah, I'd put Frank above Howe. I think De Zerbi's hard to judge because he's quite.
Yeah, he had Sassuolo in that kind of, what was it, like sixth to eighth, ninth kind
Yeah,
of
I mean, he
region
did a similar
consistently.
kind of thing with Sassuolo as what uh, Frank is doing with Brentford. Really, like they're a team. He overperformed with them consistently. So
Yeah,
I think it's hard to differentiate between those two, probably. Um, but I mean, yeah, Frank is he's obviously he's in that bracket of like really quality managers. He'll go he'll go to a big club eventually. He'll get a break eventually.
yeah. I think there needs to be a step between Brentford and the next club, unless Brentford are going to do a Brighton, and unless that doing a Brighton is consistent in terms of they go on to improve again next year and the year after. I think there needs to be a stepping stone club because, like we saw with Potter, jumping straight up to that level and having. I know there were a couple of other exceptional circumstances for Potter at Chelsea, but just having so much extra pressure and so many other things to worry about coming in when you're not at a super well run smaller club where
Yeah,
pretty much you're the top of the tree and everything kind of fits around you, but also everything's set up above you so that you don't need to worry. I
yeah,
think it's completely different when you come to a place like Chelsea or United, where the people above you half the time don't know what they're doing and just want money or commercial uh, sort of benefits from transfers and things like that. Where you have to battle with recruitment, you have to battle with corporate on signings you want, um, and how things should be run. You've got to manage up and down, that sort of thing, and you've got huge names that you need to manage. You're going for a different target. Players don't want to hear you say, "Look, we're going to play our way and see what happens." They want to hear you say, "We're going for trophies this year. Like we need to hit high levels, and this is how we're going to do it." It's a different world to come
yeah,
into. So maybe someone like De Zerbi is better placed to deal with that. I think just because he is a very attacking coach, um, and so he would
yeah. It's
probably fit
interesting, and
more.
it makes you wonder. It kind of shows how important the fit of a manager at a club is.
Yeah,
Potter going to Chelsea shows you can't just put any good manager into any team and it'll work. Just because Potter failed at Chelsea obviously doesn't make him a bad manager.
no, not at all. He's
Um,
succeeded everywhere he's been, apart from one
exactly,
place.
he's clearly a really good manager. It just shows how good the fit's got to be.
Yeah,
Um,
and even
yeah, it would
then,
be a
like there is the question of, did he really do a bad job at Chelsea, or did Chelsea do a bad job on him, not buying
yeah,
him a
yeah,
striker and
yeah,
just giving him a bloated squad, which is half full of crap?
yeah,
If Chelsea had a striker and they produced the kind of XG and things like that with the underlying numbers they had in games, they might well have finished above us, for example,
yeah,
and got Europa League, maybe even Champions League, because
yeah.
they did dominate a lot of games. They just
Yeah,
couldn't
well,
put the
it
ball in the
only
net.
really properly fell apart like midway through Potter's reign or something. But I remember up until about Christmas, people were saying, you know, Chelsea are having a bad season. It's all falling apart a little bit, but they've still got a good team and they're still putting up numbers. Their XG is good. They're still putting in performances. They've just not got the right players. It's not clicked yet.
Yeah,
Like
there was
it
still a lot
was
of
it was going
positivity.
okay up to a certain point.
Yeah, there were still
Um,
people saying, "I think he'll come good. I think they'll give him the season." There
yeah,
was a lot of positivity around their Champions League run, with
yeah, yeah.
beating Dortmund, for example, and a lot of people thought he might do well against Real Madrid as well.
Like
Yeah.
we didn't get to see that in the end because he was cut way too quickly. But I suppose you live and you learn, don't you, Chelsea? Or not?
Well, no,
Probably not.
no.
I'll be
But
interested.
yeah.
What do you think Pochettino's going to do?
Oh God. Don't know. I'm interested. It's a bit annoying because I think he's a really good manager, and he seems like the kind of manager who he's got like a bit of insanity in his brain that lends him to dealing with big egos and bloated squads maybe quite well. I mean, to be fair, he didn't really do that well at PSG. Um,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He took Tottenham from that kind of upper mid-table Europa League kind of club into a Champions League club.
yeah,
Is that his realm? Kind of like Unai's tends to be mid-table to Europa kind of level, maybe Champions League. He
I think
is
he's one
it.
of those managers where like I say, he's got that kind of weirdness about him where the entire club needs to come together behind him and his ideas. So I think if he's the kind of manager where if he's got control, um, he can kind of dictate everything. Like Dele Alli, he seemed to get in the head of those Tottenham players, and he just elevated the level of all of them. And these players, some of them just dropped off so badly after he was gone, and the whole club did really.
Yeah,
Um, so I think he's one of them managers who's definitely got the capability to do a really good job with Chelsea. Um, it just depends how much control they give him. Like he's not. It's kind of like a bit like Conte, where he's going to clash with the ownership if the ownership don't let him do his thing. So if they give him control, I think he'll build up the squad. He'll get rid of players who are not needed. He'll bring in his own players. He'll do really well. But if Bowley keeps signing random shit for no reason, I feel like he's just going to crash and burn and leave in 3 months or something.
yeah. It's a tough way to go if that's what's going to happen. Because again, it's not going to be Poch's fault necessarily that he hasn't succeeded at
No,
Chelsea. Just like it wasn't necessarily his fault that he didn't succeed at PSG. PSG was a bit of a doomed club and still
I mean
kind of
nobody
is.
has succeeded there, have they? So
Yeah, I mean, well, the closest was a final. Who got them to the
Tuchel,
final?
Tuchel, I think.
Was it Tuchel got them to the final?
Yeah, I
And
think so.
that's it, really, isn't it? It's
Yeah, nobody's like they've had a bunch of good managers. Nobody succeeded there, and yeah, maybe Chelsea will go that way. I could see it. It really depends whether the ownership has learnt their lesson as to signing random players
well,
or
I
letting
don't think
managers
they'll
leave.
quite go the PSG way because the PSG way is more of a problem partly because they never trust their youth, they never retain their youth, and they have a real problem connecting the club with the local area and the fans.
Yeah,
And then partly because they have this obsession with just spending ridiculous money on Galacticos that aren't worth what they pay for them. Like there's Galacticos that work out, and there's Galacticos that are more like their levels are pretty much always going to be consistent, but whether they're worth that much regardless is the question.
yeah,
Like
they've got to
Neymar
work
was
together as
always going to
well.
work to an extent because it's Neymar. Same with Messi, same with Mbappe, but I think the amount they paid for Neymar was more about publicity and look how rich we are,
Definitely, yeah,
rather than this is how much he's worth and we want him to be the centerpiece of our team. Because then to go on and buy the players they have and have Ibra there, bring in Messi and pay him ridiculous money, and the way they sort of pander to these players, like giving them control over transfers and influence upwards, just it's not the way a club's supposed to be run. And if it was as
no,
well just on the pitch, having that too many players like that that aren't willing to put in the work defensively, I've all got an ego about being the main man, being a goal scorer and getting assists, and not having to jog back and defend. Just doesn't sit well with any coach, I don't think. So
no. Well, it's like in some ways they're not even a football club. They're just a big company. They're just an advertising company or something.
Yeah, it's like a weird marketing strategy for a company
The
that just
football is
sells.
second rate, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
football comes second behind marketing and shirt sales and
yeah.
shit
They're a
like that.
business that sells tickets, that sells sponsorships, that
Yeah.
sells shirts, that sells memorabilia. They don't
Hmm.
really seem to. Well, obviously, like on some level, they are looking for success, but they don't seem to get the idea of how you build an authentic club that people can actually buy into and fall in
Yeah.
love with. And same thing, like on the footballing side, they don't seem to get how you actually build a real good structure within a club, and they just
Yeah.
think it's
Well,
all about,
that's the thing. I don't
hey,
think they
look, the
really need
numbers are looking good,
that.
so therefore we're doing well. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Then if they don't win the Champions League, they probably don't care as long as they, get to the quarterfinals or whatever, and as long as they can always attract Mbappe and Messi to sell their shirt sales, it really doesn't matter to them what trophies they've got in the cabinet. But it's funny because I reckon you'll always get managers wanting to go there because they'll have the ego and they'll think I'm going to be that guy who finally wins something with PSG, who changes everything at PSG, finally gets it all to work.
Yeah,
Um, so it's like it's funny because you'll always get a stream of insanely good players and managers going there, being the people who are thinking they're going to change everything this time.
yeah. Be interesting to see. Like now they've brought in Asensio and Messi's leaving, confirmed. I think both of those. What will that mean for the squad overall? Because if Neymar goes as well this summer, you're looking at one star player and then a bunch of other players filling in the squad around him, being
Yeah,
Mbappe. Is that then a recipe for success, or is it just another version of we don't know what we're doing, but we signed some players and we'll see what happens?
no, I mean, it could be good for them. Asensio seems like a good signing.
Yeah,
Um,
just whether they use him right, isn't it?
yeah, depends on the manager. 'Cause I think the manager's leaving, is he, or is it just
Well, he
rumors?
should be. He's had a huge scandal with all these talks of how he abused players and made many racist comments and things
Yeah,
like that.
I've heard loads of stuff. So
Um, he looks like he either has or is about to win the league, but did sort of cut it fine with Lons coming close. I think they've lost quite a few games this year compared to what they typically do. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him go at all. And if he does, and these allegations of the sort of things he's been saying come to light as being true, then I don't think he'll get another top job in
yeah,
Europe for a long
so
time. But
yeah, it depends on the manager, and but yeah, it could be like them Mbappe and Messi leaving and bringing in players like Asensio, who are arguably not as good players, but are actually at a good age and are still very very good players. Maybe it'll work for them, but don't know.
yeah, well, anyway, I think we should begin to wrap this up, because otherwise it's going to be a huge episode with many
Yeah,
hours of content.
we literally could talk like this for fucking hours, couldn't we? To be honest,
Yeah,
we'd go on to the next club and the next manager and just fucking
the
go
next
for like
player
marathon.
and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
Okay, finish off. What we're going to do is because there's no transfers really agreed in the Premier League yet, um, just purely based off last season. Let's predict Premier League title winner, top four,
fun.
where Villa finish, and then the relegated teams. So title
Shit, man.
winners.
If I knew you were going to ask me, I would have thought about it in advance.
Yeah, well, I haven't thought about it either, so let's just
Um,
do it off the cuff.
title winner, Manchester City.
It's an easy one. It's an easy one.
Yeah,
I think. I think you're
I
right.
reckon United will have a good season.
I think City win it again. To be honest,
Yeah,
I,
I can't see anyone coming that close. I think United will probably have a good season. Liverpool will improve, but I don't think they'll be at City level. So I think City will win it by 10 points or something.
I think United second.
Yeah,
I think Liverpool and Arsenal third and fourth. I don't know which way round I want to put them. I think because Liverpool are still in transition, even though they've had a really good end to the season, I will say just about Arsenal, then Liverpool fourth. But I think they'll get more points for sure next year than they have this year.
yeah. I think I'll get the same. I might put Arsenal second,
Ooh, a
just to
repeat.
be kind. I think it will be really close. I think Arsenal, United, Liverpool. I agree, probably top four. I think they'll all have decent seasons by their own standards. Like none of them will be good enough to win the league, but I think they'll all improve and have good seasons. But I don't know. It's really hard to tell between Arsenal and United. It really depends how their transfer windows go. But I think Arsenal are still a bit more settled, even though United have had their transitional year. I think Arsenal are still a bit more settled, so I think maybe I'll put them second.
Yeah, well they'll be on in their fourth season under Arteta, won't they? So
Yeah, and this year they've had a obviously really good year, and then they don't have to worry too much about signings. They can just improve positions where they're lacking, whereas United have still got some problem areas and stuff. So,
yeah, yeah. So okay,
so yeah,
what?
that's
So
top
you
four:
what? Your Arsenal, United,
City, Arsenal,
Liverpool,
United, Liverpool.
and I'm United. I think did I say
I think you said
Arsenal, Liverpool? I think
Arsenal.
yeah. Where do you think Villa finish?
Ooh, well, it's hard not to be biased, really, isn't it?
Well, if you go
Uh,
purely off previous season, I think we finish sixth.
yeah, I was going to say that. My instinct was fifth, but I think there's too many teams like Newcastle, Tottenham, and Chelsea
Brighton,
who have the
Brentford.
potential, and Brighton who have. I can't see Brentford fighting for fifth. I think they'll be in the shout for like sixth to ninth, but fifth, I think. Uh, Chelsea, Tottenham, Brighton, Newcastle. They've all got the potential to improve a lot.
Yeah,
So fifth would be a big ask, but it's possible. But I think likely we'll finish behind one of those in sixth. I reckon.
yeah. Sixth is my guess too.
Yeah,
Relegation. This is gonna be a tricky one.
yeah, shit. So who came? Luton,
Luton,
Burnley,
Burnley, and
and
Sheffield United.
oh god,
I see Burnley and Sheffield United staying up. I see Luton going down with Everton and Nottingham Forest.
shit, man.
I think Bournemouth might stay up. Actually, no. I'm switching that. Bournemouth, Everton, Luton to go down, and then Nottingham Forest stay up, and then yeah, Burnley and Sheffield United just stay
Yeah,
up.
I think. Ooh, I might go Luton, Bournemouth. Oh my god, it's so hard actually. Luton, Sheffield United, and Bournemouth, I guess.
Ooh, so you got two new ones going back down.
Yeah. Yeah, Luton, Sheffield United, and then the last spot's really hard. It could even be Crystal Palace or Fulham.
I
Depends
don't see
on
Palace. I
what
don't see
players they keep.
Palace. I I see Fulham finishing 17th to 15th next year, unless
Yeah.
they have a banger of a transfer window like they did previous year. I see them dropping off because their numbers weren't amazing. Their underlying numbers did say they were massively
Yeah, I don't think they'll
underperforming.
do
So
as well. I don't think they'll go down though because they've got a good manager. Um, it's
yeah,
just really hard to predict teams like that because it really depends on their transfer window. The reason I say Palace is that their manager situation is a bit unstable. and they're relying on a lot of players like Eze, Zaha, who potentially could leave, and if they lose a few key players, and then it all depends on how they reinvest and stuff. So
I think Zaha might stay, be a club legend.
yeah, I mean, we talked about this last week, didn't we?
Mm.
Um, I imagine I think at this point he'll probably stay as well, but like potentially they could lose loads of really good players.
Yeah, I suppose.
So
But I don't
the
see him
last
going down.
the last
I don't
spot's
see him
hard.
going down.
No, I think Bournemouth's most likely. I think Luton, Sheffield United, Bournemouth. I'll go with.
Yeah, I think Sheffield United will stay up just because they've had a change in style from the whole. What was his guy's name? Something Wild.
Chris Wilder.
Chris Wilder. He had a very unique style of play and was very defensive, which works for like a year,
Yeah,
maybe
they were kind
two.
of fun when they came up because they played three centre backs, but one of them would like charge up the pitch when they were attacking.
Yeah, and then the thing is, like, it worked because it was new, and because
Yeah,
they were
it was kind of
playing
novel.
defensively, it worked because the new teams were better than in the Premier League. But I think this time round they'll be a little bit more pragmatic and adaptable. I don't think they'll be so set on one style because, of course, if you do have a unique style that hinges on one particular aspect being very different, when teams figure out how to beat it,
Yeah,
you then have to completely reimagine your football club. Whereas if you're a bit
yeah,
pragmatic and you can adapt it to each game, you can play sort of different styles throughout the season depending on what's needed, and you're not necessarily as unique, but just better at the basics and better at the foundations in order to push your club forward. I think that's a more sustainable model to stay in the league, and I think that's what they've been doing more recently. And then I just think the magic of Burnley and company will I don't think they're going to be amazing. Don't get me wrong. I think they'll play some decent football and stay up by like the skin of their teeth. But I think that'll be then like a bit of a platform to
yeah,
build off the season
yeah.
after.
I can see Burnley doing okay. Like you said, they're not going to be incredible, but yeah, they seem to have something about them. Company seems to be a good manager. I don't know. Sheffield United could be a good shout to stay up. To be fair, I don't know that much about them, but I do know that they play some more at football, and they're not Chris Wilder's team anymore.
Yeah,
Um, I just think it's always hard for teams that come up. But then I was just looking at the table. I was thinking it's always hard for teams that come up because it's such a transition, and you've got to improve your squad massively.
yeah,
But then this season, none of the promoted clubs went down,
yeah. They all
and
had
honestly,
many additions, but
yeah. But
I don't think Bournemouth squad overall will be good enough. I don't think Gary O'Neill will have. I
no,
think it was quite a bit of a manager bounce, and then they tailed off again. And unless they repeat that success this season, which is never an ideal situation, then I think it's just written in
yeah,
stone that they go down.
I think it's harsh to call it a bounce. Like I think they sustained it for a surprisingly long time, but they did obviously benefit from that period where they had a bit of a new manager bounce or whatever.
Yeah,
But I think yeah, their squad's just not that good really, and like I can't really see them improving their squad or spending that much money.
yeah. Forest are going to be if they're not in financial trouble, it'll be because they've sold a lot of players and thinned that squad down, and maybe they get some good individuals in. And I think they'll sort of have a. I think they might have like a sort of who can I pick here that's a good example? I think they might have like a bit of a West Hammy season where they sort of play some decent football, put some decent numbers up, but things just don't quite click properly, and they just about avoid relegation. Similar with, I think they'll be down there with sort of Sheffield United um, and Burnley in those sort of 17th to sort of 14th kind of spots.
Yeah, I
Um,
can see that. I can see them having a almost a similar season to what they've had, a bit less chaotic. But they relied on their home form massively this season. But they seem to have their stadium's got a bit of an aura about it.
yeah,
They've got a bit of an aura around the manager because he brought them up from the championship and he was the first person to do it in ages and stuff. Like they're quite a united club. Their home form is amazing. I think they'll have a similar season. Their home form next season will still be really good. It won't quite be as up and down as this season. Like I think I can see them being sort of fairly comfortably like 14th, 15th, like always with a threat of relegation, but never actually coming that close. I feel like
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to say.
I think Everton are going down next year.
You
Two
just want
seasons on the
everything to
bounce,
go
they've
down, mate.
been extremely close. There's
Yeah,
no sign of any improvement at that club. They've now got Sean Dyche in charge, who basically sets your team up to try and avoid relegation rather than be upwardly mobile. Uh, just doesn't. The writing is almost on the wall. They've sketched out the outline of the letters. They just haven't coloured them in yet. That's the
yeah,
thing. It's been there,
yeah.
hanging over them every year.
It has.
And Villa were in a similar circumstance when we were down the bottom of the table year on year, with no change in ownership, no change in how things were managed at the
Yeah,
top.
it is quite reminiscent of when we were just scraping by, and then we had a awful season.
Yeah,
Like imagine Everton next season. They start badly, a few months into the season, so they sign some players.
I don't
So
even
what
think
happened
they'll be able
with
to
Villa?
sign many players. To be honest, I think they'll
Well,
be.
what happened with Villa is that we signed like that season. We signed fucking Mika Richards on a free and Rudy Gestede, and then we signed like Jordan Veretout and stuff. But they're all cheap. We did a bit, kind of did a Southampton kind of season where we signed loads of like potentially good players, but they're all way too young, way too raw.
Yeah,
Didn't have the right manager. But yeah, Everton. I don't know. Yeah, they could very easily sign some crap players, lose a load of games in the first 2 months, sack Dyche, get some random cunt in as manager, and then finish like dead last. Like that's
yeah, and
pretty
they don't
possible.
have an attractive squad, and I
No,
think
like if they sack
players
Dyche,
like
if Dyche does
Onana will get
badly and they sack him,
poached.
they're not getting a good manager in, are they?
Yeah, I think
Like
Onana will
nobody's.
get poached. I could
Yeah,
even see Calvert Lewin leaving, not because he's like had an amazing season or anything, and is clearly a player that can do better. I just think that his profile of a target man up top who provides that pivot point for everyone around him is
mm.
quite a desirable
I mean,
player
if
in the
people want to
Premier
take a
League.
risk on his injury record, he's still clearly a really good player. Like I was quite surprised, honestly. You know how he
Yeah,
had a really good period, maybe last year or the year before, where he got called up to England and stuff. And then he had loads of injuries, and I kind of forgot how good he was. And when he came back from injury this season under Dyche and had a few games, I remember watching him and like actually being surprised how good he was. Like I kind of forgot he's actually a really really good forward.
yeah. I mean, if
Um,
he has a good season next year, that could be what keeps them up. But I think they might well
True.
lose Pickford. You know, we've got multiple teams looking for goalkeepers this year. They may
Yeah,
well lose Pickford. The rest of their squad is so old, apart from McNeil and Onana, and Jared Braithwaite's coming back off loan, but I think he might get poached.
yeah,
I just don't see
yeah.
it being
That
good for them
squad is
next year.
bad.
They're
Yeah,
in massive debt. They're getting a stadium built. Who knows if they'll even play a full season in their current stadium, Goodison Park. It just nothing looks good over there at the moment.
yeah, I do agree. Yeah,
So that's why I've got them tipped to go down.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean that's our early predictions of not the full table, but at least the
yeah. I
mid
reckon
to
it'd be
ends of the table.
interesting to do it again. Um, like before the first day of the season, after majority of business is done, and see how differently we feel about several about like top four relegation and stuff,
Yeah, that'd definitely be
because
an interesting thing to do.
it will all change pretty drastically over the next couple months. So
Well, that's the thing. It does in some people's eyes because people get really whipped up and swept away with transfers. But transfers don't fundamentally change your club. If if we get new managers coming in like Poch is at Chelsea, then that's when you can be like, oh yes, this is something's probably going to change.
yeah, true, it is true,
Transfers
but
can help, but it has to be, you have to be looking at play like for United, for example. I wouldn't change my prediction of them coming second based on uh, transfers that they have, just purely because I think they've been getting better and better, and Ten Hag's influence over that squad's going to get better. He's
yeah,
going to get the dead wood out. I'm I've not included transfers I think they will make in my prediction. If they take care of problem areas, if they get a striker like Harry Kane in or Victor Osimhen, that's different because you're not talking about just slightly improving a position or adding depth. You're talking about fundamentally changing the way people perceive that position in your squad from a Wout Weghorst who everyone thinks isn't good enough and probably wasn't good enough and just kind of had to fit a role because that's all he could really be used for, to pretty much the league's best striker and one of the
Yeah,
world's best strikers that can do pretty much everything apart from running behind. That's a big, big change with
yeah.
guaranteed output, and that's when you can start to think, okay, that's going to have an effect on where
I
they finish
mean,
in the
that
league.
shows that transfers do make a difference, though, right? It
Yeah, but
depends.
only
It does depend on the choice.
only guaranteed in those sort of fine margins, if you know what I mean. Like if Arsenal go out and sign, for example, let's say, um, what's his name? They, what's something David, Jonathan David from Lille, for
Oh
example.
yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, that's a great talent, great striker, but realistically, transferred to the Premier League, he's probably not even of the
Oh
level of
no. Well,
Jesus. And so
yeah,
you
no.
bring a striker in
That
like
kind of
that,
signing
and
wouldn't change your mind on anything.
yeah, but it's like it's a quality signing that people would be like, oh yeah, if Arsenal did two or three signings of that level, you'd be like, oh, they've had a great window. Yeah, they're going to get better this year. Well, no, probably not. Those players are going to bed in. They're going to add to the squad, and they're going to probably make them compete better on multiple fronts. But if they're not going to make them achieve a higher points total across a league season. I don't think necessarily.
Yeah, that's
Whereas
fair.
if someone like United brings in, just for argument's sake, ignore the context around this, but say they brought in João Cancelo and Harry Kane and a good DM, sort of like Frankie de Jong, for example, you've got then three world class players in positions where they previously had pretty average players at best,
Yeah,
and that completely
yeah. I
transforms the
mean,
way their squad
it's
looks.
contextual, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
in the same way that if Everton lose Pickford and Calvert-Lewin, that would change your opinion on whether they're going down or not,
yeah,
because suddenly they've lost two players who are basically, as individuals, capable of saving them from relegation.
yeah. I think it's
But
easier
if
to say, yeah, what players you're going to lose. It's easier to say if a
for
team's going to lose
relegation teams,
players.
definitely, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's easier to say they're going to lose players and the impact that will have on a squad
Yeah, like
rather than
Everton losing Pickford versus Bournemouth signing a few random players who could be good that you've never heard of. Like, one of them is massively influential. One of them is kind of might
could
improve you a
be.
little
Yeah,
bit, might not. Like,
yeah.
it
It's
depends on the club, really.
yeah,
It's like I think with Arsenal and Man United as an example. I reckon they'll be at a similar level next year. Um, I think the signings. I reckon at the end of the window, depending on the signings they made, might sway. It wouldn't massively change my opinion. Maybe unless United signed Harry Kane. I don't think it would massively change my opinion, but I think it might. When two clubs are kind of at a very similar level, it might. Transfers can sway things a bit. I
yeah,
think I do agree. They're not. It's not as influential a change as a manager, and people do get like crazy excited about signings are going to change everything. When often they're not as big as you think they are. But I think they sway things for sure.
yeah. If there's a good system set up already and you bring better quality into it, that's when you can see those exponential gains. Kind of like we saw with Arsenal last season, having no real striker of note to Gabby Jesus, no
Yeah, yeah,
real uh, sort of proper um, right back to all of a sudden Ben White being transformed. Things like that, where it's all of us they've gone from virtually nothing to something actually really good
yeah,
that drastically improves what they had there. If they have a good system and a good structure in place already, that's when you can see it. But if it's kind of like teams that are like, not sure, even if they bring in a really good player, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. So like if
yeah.
United was still under Solskjaer and bought Kane, I still wouldn't back them to finish higher than fourth. But because
Really.
they've got Ten Hag, and because of the way he sets his teams up, and the way we've already seen him be effective with Wout Weghorst and Rashford, swapping Wout Weghorst for Kane and having Rashford as your Heung-min Son, for example,
Yeah,
can essentially carry a team into the Champions League and through a Champions League. Um,
yeah,
so with a coach of much better quality and with a better quality squad around them than say they had at Spurs, for example, uh, I just think that's when you see the real gains happen.
yeah. I mean, Villa's quite a good example where we, on paper, signed loads of good players, and because we had a shit manager, it made absolutely no difference whatsoever.
Yeah, no real structure in place. There wasn't really a plan with any of those players. They didn't fit a transfer policy. It was just Grealish
Yeah.
did a few things for us, so we're going to buy some players that do some of those things, and hopefully they all fit in somehow. Like it
Hmm.
just was never going to work, was it? But
Yep.
yeah. Anyway, now that we've brought it back to Villa again, should we sign off?
Well, finally, that went on way
Yeah.
too long as well.
Yeah, well, I'll try and edit it down, but the thing is, it's hard when you're the person editing it that's done the podcast. You're kind of like, oh, but I don't want to cut out that bit or
Yeah,
that
yeah,
bit, and then it ends up
yeah,
just being
yeah,
2 hours long, or this
yeah.
will probably end up being 3 hours long. But anyway, people don't want to watch it. They don't have to watch it, do they? So
Yeah, fuck it. I had
uh,
fun.
yeah, no, it's good. To be honest, I probably want to mix it up and probably do more football than um, general Slipper Sessions podcast because even though I do enjoy those, we tend not to have as much to talk about, and
Yeah,
we have to
I
kind
mean, we
of
could
come up with
we could change the
topics.
ratio from mostly random stuff and then the occasional football to like generally football stuff with like every other week or every few weeks have a
Yeah, when
different
we've got
one.
something to talk about, or something's happened, or
Yeah, yeah,
something's interesting is we want to talk about,
yeah,
and then we can have that kind of podcast where it's not about football.
yeah. No, I agree. Sounds good.
Do you know what? We should have like a strict rule for the Slipper Sessions where you cannot bring up Villa.
Yeah,
Only
that
if we
sounds
have a
actually.
guest can they bring up Villa.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, right, yeah, that was episode 2 of what I think we're going to call for the Football Bollocks podcast, if we're allowed.
Yeah.
Something
Football
along
bollocks.
those lines, because Ball Talk's taken, so we need to change that ASAP. But
So bollocks is a better word than balls.
yeah, maybe. Football Balls podcast. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for watching if you did. Like, comment, subscribe, follow, whatever. I mean, we're doing this for fun, but if you want to do that, do it. But yeah, see ya.
See you next week.
So much enthusiasm.